The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of cosmic energy. For 200 years, the High Republic has flourished under this universal truth, with the Jedi Order standing as guardians of peace and justice. The starlight beacon burns bright at the edge of the outer rim, a symbol of hope extending the Republic's light into unexplored darkness. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives, something that operates on principles the Force itself cannot fully explain? Hyperspace was screaming. Master Avar Kriss stood in the meditation chamber of Starlight Beacon, her connection to the Force suddenly flooded with discordant energy unlike anything she'd experienced in 30 years as a Jedi. Around her, a dozen other Jedi gasped and staggered as the disturbance rippled through the cosmic fabric itself. It wasn't violence. It wasn't the dark side. It was wrong, like a color that shouldn't exist or a sound that made reality flinch. Master Kriss. A young Padawan burst through the doors, his face pale. The scanners, something's coming through hyperspace, but it's not following any known corridor. Avar steadied herself, reaching out through the Force to the interconnected web of Jedi across starlight. She could feel their confusion, their alarm. Whatever approached wasn't a ship. The Force recoiled from it like oil from water, unable to fully touch or comprehend the signature. She extended her awareness further and felt the disturbance intensify, a tearing sensation, as if someone had grabbed the universe by its seams and pulled. All stations, this is Master Kriss. Prepare for unidentified arrival. Medical teams to Docking Bay 7. Security to. The words died in her throat as space itself cracked open above the beacon. It wasn't a hyperspace emergence. Hyperspace didn't fracture reality with green and gold light. It didn't leave geometric patterns burning in the void like scars on the fabric of existence. Through the impossible wound in space tumbled a figure, humanoid, wrapped in a crimson cloak that moved with its own will, surrounded by dying sparks of energy that made Avar's Force sense scream in confusion. The figure fell, unconscious, drifting in the vacuum toward Starlight's hull. Tractor beam. Now. Avar commanded, already running toward the bay. By the time she arrived, a team of Jedi had pulled the stranger inside. The docking bay doors sealed, atmosphere flooding back as Avar approached cautiously. The red cloak, no, it was moving, repositioning its wearer gently on the deck as if protecting him from harm. Avar had seen many things in her years, but never an article of clothing with apparent sentience. The man was human, or near human. Dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. Strange clothing, blue robes with an ornate pattern, different from any culture she recognized. His hands bore scars, trembling slightly even in unconsciousness. Most striking was the medallion around his neck, a bronze eye with intricate designs, somehow feeling heavy in the Force despite being physically light. His life signs are stable, said Master Nib Asek, a Jedi healer kneeling beside the stranger. But there's something, his presence in the Force is fractured. Like he's caught between here and somewhere else. I can feel it, Avar murmured. She reached out tentatively through the Force, trying to sense the man's intentions, his nature. What she found made her breath catch. His mind was a fortress, not blocked by dark side techniques, but structured in a way that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Beneath the surface, she felt vast depths of knowledge, pain, determination, and something that tasted like responsibility worn across universes. The man's eyes snapped open, gray-blue, sharp despite his disorientation. He sat up with remarkable speed, hands already moving in complex gestures that left faint golden traces in the air. The cloak billowed protectively around him. Easy, Avar said, raising her hands peacefully. You're safe. I'm Jedi Master Avar Kriss. You're aboard Starlight Beacon. Can you understand me? The stranger's eyes darted around the docking bay, taking in the Jedi, the architecture, the vast viewport showing unfamiliar stars. His fingers continued moving through partial gestures, and Avar sensed his growing frustration, like a musician whose instrument suddenly refused to produce sound. I understand you, he said finally, his voice hoarse. His accent was strange, flattening some vowels in a way Avar had never heard. Where am I? What galaxy is this? You're in the Galactic Republic, Nib answered carefully. The core worlds are several days hyperspace travel from here. What's your name? What happened to you? The man stood slowly, the cloak steadying him. He tried another gesture, more forceful this time, and produced a weak flicker of golden energy that sputtered and died. His jaw tightened in frustration. My name is Stephen Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange. He looked at his trembling hands, then at the Jedi surrounding him. I'm from Earth. I'm a master of the mystic arts, Sorcerer Supreme, and guardian of my reality against multiversal threats. And if I'm reading this situation correctly, he closed his eyes, and Avar felt him reaching out with something that wasn't quite the Force but operated on similar principles. I've been severed from the dimensional network that powers my abilities. I'm stranded in your universe with approximately 70% of my capacity offline. Mystic arts. Master Nib exchanged glances with Avar. We have the Force here. It flows through all living things. I can feel it, Strange interrupted, opening his eyes. It's everywhere. Pervasive. And it's interfering with my connection to the Vishanti, to the dimensional conduits I normally channel. He looked directly at Avar. You're telekinetic. Telepathic. I can sense the energy field you're connected to. But it's not just energy, it has consciousness, intention. It's fascinating and deeply inconvenient. Avar felt a chill. This man had assessed their abilities in seconds despite being weakened and disoriented. Dr. Strange, you arrived through a phenomenon we've never seen. The Force itself recoiled from your entrance. I need to understand, are you a threat to this station? Strange met her gaze steadily. I don't know yet. Where I come from, I protect my reality from existential dangers. I've fought gods, demons, and entities that devour dimensions. I was sealing a breach in the multiverse when something pulled me through, a massive gravitational anomaly intersecting with whatever you call hyperspace. His expression hardened. If the breach wasn't sealed, if it followed me here, then yes, I'm the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to your galaxy. Not because I want to be, but because I may have brought something with me that makes your worst nightmares look like pleasant dreams. The Jedi in the docking bay tensed, hands moving toward lightsabers. Avar held up a hand, stopping them. Through the Force, she sensed strange truth, he believed every word. And beneath his calm exterior, she felt something she recognized intimately, the weight of responsibility that came with great power and the scars earned protecting those who would never know how close they came to annihilation. Then we have much to discuss, Dr. Strange, Avar said. And if you're right about the danger, we have very little time. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Strange nodded once, sharply. The cloak settled around his shoulders like armor. Take me to whoever leads your order. If something followed me through that breach, you're going to need every advantage you can get. And despite my limitations, I'm still one of the most dangerous sorcerers in the multiverse. His hands moved through a gesture that produced weak but unmistakable golden light. Let's hope that's enough. The council chamber of Starlight Beacon existed in a perpetual state of controlled serenity. Circular, with windows offering a 360-degree view of the stars, it was designed to remind Jedi that they served something larger than themselves. Today, that serenity was fracturing under the weight of the impossible. 12 Jedi Masters sat in a semicircle, their attention fixed on the man standing at the chamber's center. Dr. Strange stood with his hands clasped behind his back, the cloak of levitation draped across his shoulders in a way that somehow conveyed watchfulness. Avar Kriss had brought him directly here, sensing the urgency in both his words and the continued disturbance rippling through the Force. Master Stellan Gios, the ranking Jedi on Starlight, studied Strange with the careful attention of a scholar examining an ancient text. He was human, perhaps 50 standard years, with the bearing of someone who had spent decades balancing wisdom with action. Dr. Strange. You claim to be from another universe entirely. In 2 centuries of expansion into the Outer Rim, we've never encountered evidence of such a thing. With respect, Master Geos, you wouldn't have the technology to detect it, Strange replied. His tone was factual, not condescending. Your hyperspace travel operates on principles of spatial compression within a single universe. Multiversal barriers exist on a different dimensional axis entirely. Where I come from, we've catalogued over 600,000 distinct realities, each with their own physical laws, histories, and... Impossible, Master Nib Asek interrupted. The Force connects all things. If other universes existed, the Force would extend to them. We would feel them. Strange's expression didn't change, but Avar noticed the slight tightening around his eyes, the look of someone choosing their words carefully. The Force is powerful, but it appears to be localized to your universe. In mine, we have different fundamental energies. The mystic arts draw from dimensional rifts and entities called the Vishanti. These powers can achieve effects similar to what I've seen you do, telekinesis, telepathy, precognition, but through entirely different mechanisms. Show us, said Master Yariel Poof, the Quirmian Jedi whose elongated neck gave him an otherworldly appearance even by galactic standards. If your powers are so different from the Force, demonstrate them. Strange nodded slowly. He raised his hands and began moving them through intricate patterns. Avar watched, fascinated, as golden light traced geometric shapes in the air, mandalas of impossible complexity that rotated and shifted with mathematical precision. The symbols hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than her eyes could process. But the constructs flickered. Weakened. Strange's jaw clenched with effort as the golden light sputtered like a dying flame. After 15 seconds, the constructs collapsed entirely, dissolving into sparks that faded against the viewport. That should have generated a shield capable of withstanding a nuclear blast, Strange said, breathing slightly harder. Here, I can barely maintain cohesion for seconds. Your Force, it's interfering with my ability to channel dimensional energy. It's like trying to tune a radio in a room full of static generators. Master Avar felt it through the Force, the way Strange's attempt to use his magic created ripples of wrongness, like oil mixing with water. The Force didn't flow through him the way it did with living beings. Instead, his powers seemed to exist in parallel, occasionally intersecting but never truly integrating. This is concerning, Stellan said quietly. The Force rejects your power. In our history, such rejection typically indicates dark side corruption or... I'm not corrupted, Strange cut him off, voice hardening. I've spent years defending my reality from entities that would make your Sith look like children playing with kitchen knives. I've seen what corruption looks like from the inside. For a moment, his expression flickered, pain, regret, memory. I've even fallen to it once and clawed my way back. Whatever your Force senses in me, it's not darkness. It's difference. The council chamber fell silent. Avar reached out through the Force, extending her awareness to the other masters. She felt their debate wordlessly, concern, curiosity, fear, and underneath it all, the question that terrified them, what if the Force wasn't the only cosmic power in existence? There's something else, Strange continued. The anomaly that pulled me here, it wasn't natural. I was sealing a breach created by an entity called Shumagorath, a chaos demon that feeds on dimensional instability. The breach shouldn't have intersected with your galaxy unless, he paused, thinking. Unless something here created a corresponding weakness. A vulnerability in your dimensional barriers. Hyperspace, Avar said suddenly. Understanding clicked into place. You mentioned hyperspace when you arrived. We use it for faster-than-light travel, but recently there have been accidents. Ships emerging in impossible locations. The emergences, entire systems disrupted by hyperspace anomalies. Strange sighs sharpened. Emergencies or emergences? Capital E, Master Stellan clarified. 6 months ago, the Legacy run, a massive hyperspace transport, hit something in hyperspace that shouldn't have existed. It tore the ship apart and sent fragments emerging across a dozen systems simultaneously. Thousands died. We still don't understand what happened. Oh no. Strange's voice went quiet in a way that made Avar's spine tingle. How often do you use hyperspace? How many ships? Millions, Yariel Poof answered. Hyperspace is the lifeblood of the Republic. Every day, countless ships. You've been punching holes in dimensional barriers without knowing it. Strange started pacing, his hands moving through partial gestures as if calculating. Every hyperspace jump creates a microfracture. Usually they heal instantly. But if you've been doing this for thousands of years, with millions of ships, you've weakened the barriers to the point where my breach could connect to your galaxy. He stopped, turning to face the council. I didn't bring the danger here. You created the vulnerability that let me through. And if the breach is still open, Shumagorath or something worse could follow. This is speculation, Master Nib said, but Avar heard the uncertainty in her voice. It's pattern recognition, Strange countered. I've seen this before in other dimensions. You develop technology that manipulates space-time without understanding the deeper consequences. Eventually, something notices the cracks and exploits them. Master Stellan rose from his seat, moving to the viewport. Outside, starlight beacons' lights illuminated the darkness, a promise of safety and protection. Assuming you're correct, and I'm not conceding that you are, what would you propose we do? I need access to your records on these hyperspace anomalies, Strange said immediately. I need to understand the physics of how your faster-than-light travel works. And I need to find a way to restore my connection to dimensional energy, because right now I'm operating at a fraction of my capability. He looked at each council member in turn. I also need you to understand something crucial, I'm not asking for permission. If a dimensional threat is bleeding into your universe, I will stop it. That's what I do. That's what I am. I would prefer to work with you, but I won't be stopped by bureaucracy or religious doctrine while an existential threat grows. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several masters reached for their lightsabers, not activating them, but ready. Avar felt the force tense around Strange like a coiling serpent. That sounds remarkably like a threat, Doctor, Stellan said softly. It's a statement of fact. Strange didn't move, but the cloak billowed slightly. I'm stranded in your universe, weakened, and facing an unknown timeline before potential catastrophe. I don't have time for politics. But I'm also smart enough to know I need allies who understand this galaxy's rules and resources. His expression softened slightly. I'm not your enemy. I'm a doctor who took an oath to protect life, and a sorcerer who swore to guard against dimensional threats. Your goals and mine align. Can we work together, or do I need to find another way? Avar stepped forward. Masters, I propose we grant Dr. Strange provisional access to our archives, under supervision. If his claims about dimensional threats are even partially true, we cannot afford to dismiss them. The Force brought him to us for a reason. The Force rejected him, Master Nib countered. His very presence creates disturbance. Or, Avar said carefully, the Force is telling us that something new has arrived. Something beyond our current understanding. Isn't that what the High Republic is supposed to be about? Exploration and growth. The Force is not finite, Masters. Perhaps it's showing us that the universe is larger than we believed. The council members exchanged looks. Through the Force, Avar felt the debate raging, tradition versus innovation, caution versus necessity, fear versus hope. Finally, Master Stellan spoke. Very well. Dr. Strange, you will be granted supervised access to our archives on hyperspace phenomena. Master Kriss will accompany you. But understand this, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. If you prove to be a threat to this beacon, to the Republic, or to the Jedi Order, we will stop you. The Force has guided us for millennia. We trust in its wisdom above all else. Strange nodded once. Fair enough. But Master Geos, you should know, in my experience, cosmic powers don't grant wisdom. They grant perspective. What you do with that perspective is up to you. He turned to Avar. Shall we begin? Time is something I'm very familiar with, and right now it's working against us. As they left the council chamber, Avar felt the force swirling around them both, uncertain, questioning, afraid. She had championed Strange's cause, but deep down, she wondered if she just advocated for inviting something dangerous into the heart of Starlight Beacon. Behind them, the council remained in heated discussion. And in the depths of space beyond the viewport, invisible to sensors and barely perceptible even to the Force, dimensional barriers continued to thin. Something vast and hungry had noticed the cracks. And it was beginning to push. The archives of Starlight Beacon descended 7 levels below the main structure, a vast repository of knowledge collected from across the galaxy. Holocrons glowed softly on crystalline shelves. Data terminals hummed with information gathered from thousands of worlds. The air smelled of preserved parchment and ozone from active electronics. For Avar Kriss, it had always been a place of peace, the accumulated wisdom of the Jedi Order accessible to all who sought understanding. Dr. Strange walked through the archives like a man evaluating a battlefield. Your organization is impressive, he said, examining a Jedi holocron with professional interest. The small pyramid rotated slowly, projecting a miniature Jedi Master who began reciting lessons on Form 3 lightsaber combat. Holographic data storage with force-based encryption. Elegant solution. He moved to the next shelf without waiting for the holocron to finish. But your indexing system assumes force sensitivity. How do non-force users access this information? They don't, Avar admitted, following him through the stacks. The Jedi archives are for Jedi. The General Republic has its own libraries. Strange paused, glancing back at her. You keep knowledge restricted based on genetic capability to manipulate an energy field. The Force is not genetics, Doctor. It flows through all living things. But not all beings can consciously manipulate it, Strange interrupted. I've met enough of your people in the past 6 hours to understand the pattern. Jedi are recruited young, trained extensively, and granted access to power and knowledge others cannot reach. He turned back to the shelves. In my world, we call that aristocracy. Avar felt a flash of irritation. The Jedi serve. We don't rule. You serve from a position of power that cannot be challenged by those without your abilities, Strange said mildly. I'm not judging, I'm observing. In my reality, sorcerers face similar questions. Who watches the watchers? Who stops us if we decide our wisdom supersedes democratic will? He pulled a datapad from a nearby terminal, fingers moving across it with surprising facility. The difference is we chose our power through study and sacrifice. You were born to yours. I was born force-sensitive, Avar corrected, moving beside him. But I chose to become a Jedi. I chose service, discipline, and the light. Strange looked at her directly, and for the first time she saw something other than analytical distance in his gray-blue eyes, something almost like respect. Fair point. Choice matters more than circumstance. I apologize for the assumption. The moment passed quickly as Strange returned his attention to the datapad. Now, show me everything you have on the hyperspace anomalies. Start with the legacy-run disaster and work forward chronologically. Avar guided him to a private study chamber, a circular room with a holoprojector at its center. She activated the system and pulled up the relevant files. The air shimmered as three-dimensional representations of data streams materialized around them. The legacy run was a Bind Guild transport, Avar began, manipulating the display. It was carrying thousands of passengers along a well-established hyperspace route when sensors detected something in their path, an object, or mass, or phenomenon. The records are unclear because the ship didn't survive to complete its data transmission. The hologram showed the Legacy Run's final moments, a massive vessel fragmenting in hyperspace, pieces emerging across multiple systems simultaneously. Some appeared in real space at relativistic speeds, causing catastrophic impacts. Others simply vanished, never to be recovered. The death toll had reached 8,000 confirmed, with twice that number missing. Strange leaned forward, his eyes tracking the data streams with intense focus. Play that sequence again. Slow it down by a factor of 10. Avar complied. The disaster unfolded in painful slow motion, the ship's forward sections encountering something that registers on the sensors as both solid mass and empty void simultaneously. The collision tears reality like fabric, and the ship comes apart along impossible angles. There, Strange said, pointing. His finger traced a pattern in the fragmentation. See how the debris doesn't just scatter. It's being pulled along dimensional vectors. Each piece is emerging in a different location because they're traveling through folded spacetime. He straightened. Your hyperspace isn't a separate dimension. It's a compression of your normal space, folded through higher dimensional geometry. When the Legacy Run hit that obstacle, it didn't just collide with an object, it hit a dimensional anchor point. A what? Imagine spacetime as a sheet of paper, Strange explained, his hands moving in gestures that left faint golden traces, teaching habits so ingrained that even his weakened state couldn't suppress them. Hyperspace travel folds that paper so two distant points touch. But if something pins the paper down at a specific location, an anchor point, trying to fold through it tears the paper instead. His expression darkened. Someone or something is deliberately creating these anchor points in your hyperspace lanes. Avar felt cold. That would mean the Legacy Run wasn't an accident. It was an attack. Or an experiment, Strange said grimly. Show me the other incidents. They spent the next hour reviewing reports. The pattern emerged slowly but undeniably. 6 major hyperspace incidents in 6 months, each occurring along major Republic shipping lanes. Casualties ranged from dozens to thousands. The Republic attributed them to navigational errors or unexpected stellar phenomena. But with Strange's analysis, Avar saw what the Jedi had missed. Each incident occurred at mathematically consistent intervals, creating a geometric pattern when mapped in 3-dimensional space. It's a summoning circle, Strange said finally, sitting back. Or the equivalent. Someone is using hyperspace disruptions to weaken dimensional barriers at specific coordinates. They're creating a gateway for something to enter your universe. He looked at Avar with absolute certainty. This started before I arrived. My breach intersected with their work because they'd already compromised your dimensional integrity. I'm not the cause, I'm a symptom. Who would do this? Avar demanded. What could they possibly gain? Depends on what they're trying to summon. Strange stood, pacing around the holographic display. In my experience, dimensional summoning requires 3 things: knowledge of what exists beyond your reality, power sufficient to breach the barriers, and insanity sufficient to think you can control what comes through. He stopped. Do you have any cults, fringe groups, or organizations that reject the Force or view it as a limitation? Avar's mind raced through her knowledge of galactic factions. The Nihil are marauders who use unstable hyperspace technology. They've been raiding Republic shipping for months. But they're criminals, not mystics. Don't underestimate criminals, Strange said. Desperation and ambition make excellent motivations for dimensional tampering. What else? There are always dark side cults, Avar admitted reluctantly. Small groups that reject Jedi teachings. Most are harmless, misguided philosophers. But there's one we've been monitoring. The Path of the Open Hand. They believe the Force should be free, that no one should be able to control or channel it. They've been gathering followers on the frontier worlds. Strange's attention sharpened. They oppose Force users. They oppose Force utilization, Avar clarified. They believe channeling the Force is theft, stealing power from the natural universe. Their leader, a woman called the Mother, preaches that the galaxy would be better if the Force remained untouched by sentient manipulation. And if someone showed them a way to make the Force irrelevant? Strange suggested. If they discovered that other forms of power exist, powers that don't require midichlorians or genetic predisposition, would they pursue that knowledge? Avar felt the pieces clicking together in her mind. You think they're trying to import your magic? Or something worse? Strange returned to the datapad, pulling up galactic maps. The path of the open hand, where are they based? Their main compound is on Dalna, in the outer rim. But they have cells across dozens of worlds. Dr. Strange, they're zealots, but they're not violent. The Republic has been watching them, and they seem content to preach their philosophy without. Until someone gave them a weapon. Strange overlaid the hyperspace incident coordinates on the galactic map. The geometric pattern resolved into a shape centered on a region of space uncomfortably close to Dalna. This pattern isn't random. It's focused. And the focal point is, he zoomed in. Approximately 3 parsecs from the path's headquarters. The study chamber felt suddenly smaller. Avar reached out through the Force, seeking guidance, and found only turbulent uncertainty. The elegant order of the archive seemed fragile now, as if knowledge alone couldn't protect them from threats they'd never imagined. We need to inform the Council, Avar said. We need to investigate Dalna, Strange countered. Your Council will debate and deliberate. By the time they reach consensus, whoever's behind this will have completed their work. He met her gaze steadily. I've seen this pattern before, Master Kriss. Cults that discover dimensional power always move faster than authorities can respond. They're driven by certainty while institutions are paralyzed by caution. You're suggesting we go rogue, Avar said flatly. I'm suggesting we act while action can still make a difference. Strange's expression softened slightly. Look, I understand institutional loyalty. I was part of the medical establishment for years, bound by protocols and hierarchies. But when lives are at stake, sometimes you have to trust your judgment over the chain of command. The cloak stirred on his shoulders. I'm going to Dalna with or without Jedi support. The question is whether you're coming with me, or whether I'm doing this alone in an unfamiliar galaxy. Avar stood silent for a long moment, feeling the weight of the decision. She was Jedi, trained to trust the Council, to defer to collective wisdom. But she was also a woman who had spent years on the frontier, learning that sometimes action preceded permission. Through the Force, she felt something else, a subtle wrongness, like a note played slightly off-key. It emanated from the direction Strange had indicated, from the space near Dalna. The Force was trying to tell her something, if only she was brave enough to listen to warnings rather than comfort. If we do this, Avar said slowly, we do it my way. We investigate carefully. We gather evidence. And if we find proof of dimensional tampering, we bring it to the Council before taking further action. She fixed Strange with her most authoritative stare. No heroic solo charges. No assumptions that your way is the only way. We work together as partners, or we don't work at all. Strange considered this, then extended his hand. Partners. Though I reserve the right to say, I told you so, if your Council proves as bureaucratically slow as I'm expecting. Avar clasped his hand. His grip was strong despite the visible tremor in his fingers, scars from an old injury, she realized. This man had rebuilt himself from damage that would have broken others. Perhaps that was why the Force had brought him here. The High Republic needed people who understood that even shattered things could be made whole again. There's one more thing, Strange said, releasing her hand. I need to attempt something before we leave. I've been studying your Force since I arrived, trying to understand why it interferes with my dimensional channeling. He raised his hands, beginning to trace patterns in the air. What if instead of fighting against it, I tried to work with it? Dr. Strange, you're not Force sensitive. Not in the way you understand it, he agreed. Golden light flickered between his fingers, weak but persistent. But the Force is just another form of cosmic energy. And I've spent years learning to channel and redirect energy flows. His hands moved faster, creating geometric patterns that somehow incorporated the flowing curves of Force manipulation Avar recognized from her own training. The golden light brightened. Steadied. And for just a moment, Avar felt something impossible, the Force responding to strange gestures, flowing through the channels his magic created, the two forms of power intertwining like dancers finding unexpected rhythm. Strange sighs widened. I can feel it. Your Force, it's not rejecting my power. It's curious. The construct in his hand stabilized into a perfect mandala that glowed with golden green light, magic and Force fused into something entirely new. Then his concentration broke. The construct collapsed. Strange staggered, and Avar caught his arm, feeling the tremor of exhaustion running through him. I'm fine, he said, though he clearly wasn't. But I just proved something important. Your Force and my mystic arts aren't incompatible. They're complementary. Which means with time and practice, I could become the first sorcerer who channels both dimensional magic and the Force simultaneously. Or you could tear yourself apart trying, Avar said firmly. You need rest before we go anywhere. Strange nodded reluctantly. 3 hours. Then we leave for Dalna. Because Master Kriss, I've been counting. Based on the pattern of incidents, the next hyperspace disruption is scheduled to occur in approximately 72 hours. And I guarantee it will be the biggest one yet. As they left the archives, Avar sent a discreet message to the council informing them of her intentions. She expected resistance, debate, perhaps even direct orders to stand down. But she was Avar Kriss, the hero of Hetzal, and she had learned to trust the Force even when it led her into danger. Behind them, the holocrons dimmed as the archive's automated systems entered night cycle. In the darkness, knowledge waited, ancient, patient, and increasingly insufficient for the threats now emerging. The Force whispered warnings. For the first time in her life, Avar wondered if warnings were enough. The path of the open hand compound on Dalna sprawled across a rocky plateau surrounded by crimson desert. From orbit, it looked almost peaceful, simple structures built from local stone, agricultural domes for self-sufficiency, and gathering spaces where followers could contemplate their philosophy. The path rejected technological excess, preferring what they called harmony with the natural universe. Avar had reviewed their doctrine during the hyperspace journey. On the surface, their beliefs seemed naive but harmless. Dr. Strange saw something else entirely. That's not a religious compound, he said, studying the sensor readouts from their shuttle. That's a fortress disguised as a monastery. Avar looked closer. Now that Strange had pointed it out, she noticed the patterns, structures positioned to create overlapping fields of fire, agricultural domes placed to obscure sensor sightlines, gathering spaces that could double as defensive emplacements. The path had built their home to resist assault while appearing vulnerable. They're preparing for war, Avar murmured. Or they're already fighting one. Strange manipulated the controls, pulling up thermal imaging. There, underground structures extending at least 50 meters below the surface. Far more extensive than the visible compound. Whatever they're doing here, the real work is happening where sensors can't easily reach. They'd traveled in Avar's personal shuttle, a small craft provided to senior Jedi for independent missions. During the 2-day journey, Avar had watched Strange adapt to the galaxy with unsettling speed. He'd studied the shuttle's hyperdrive systems with the focus of a scientist dissecting a new phenomenon, asked pointed questions about Republic politics, and spent hours meditating, though his meditation looked different from Jedi practice, involving complex hand gestures and muttered incantations that left faint traces of golden light. His power was returning. Slowly, painfully, but returning. Avar had watched him create stronger constructs each day, lasting minutes now instead of seconds. He claimed the Force was teaching him new pathways, new ways to channel dimensional energy. She wasn't sure if that was progress or danger. We land a kilometer away and approach on foot, Avar decided. I'll use the Force to mask our presence. With luck, we can observe without. They already know we're here, Strange interrupted, pointing at the sensor display. 3 ships just launched from underground hangars. Fighters, small, fast, heading directly for us. Avar's hand moved to the shuttle's defensive systems, but Strange was already manipulating the controls with surprising competence for someone who'd never flown a Republic vessel before. The shuttle banked hard as weapons fire streaked past their viewport. These aren't warning shots, Strange observed with clinical detachment. They're trying to kill us. The path of the open hand doesn't use violence. Avar protested even as she reinforced the shields through the Force. Then someone's rewritten their doctrine recently. Strange sent the shuttle into a diving spiral that made Avar's stomach lurch. More weapons fire, not blasters, she realized, but something else. The energy signatures were wrong, fluctuating in ways that made her Force sense scream warnings. One blast clipped their starboard shield. The shuttle system shrieked alarms, but what disturbed Avar more was the sensation that accompanied the impact, a feeling of emptiness, as if the Force itself had been momentarily erased from the affected section of hull. Dr. Strange, those weapons. I know. His voice was grim. They're firing Force nullification energy. Someone taught them how to weaponize the absence of your cosmic power. He pulled the shuttle into a climb that defied physics, the cloak of levitation somehow extending its influence to stabilize their trajectory. Which means whoever's running this operation knows exactly what they're doing. The 3 fighters pursued with mechanical precision. Avar reached out through the Force, trying to sense the pilots, and found nothing. Not the emptiness of droids or the shadow of dark side corruption, but absolute void. The ships registered in her awareness like holes in reality. They're shielded, she said with growing horror. I can't feel the pilots. I can't influence them through the Force. Then we do this the old-fashioned way. Strange's hands moved in a complex pattern despite maintaining control of the shuttle. Golden light formed around his left hand while his right guided their flight. Cloak, I need you. The crimson garment billowed off his shoulders and phased through the shuttle's hull, passing through solid matter as if it didn't exist. Avar watched through the viewport as the sentient cloak transformed from fabric into a crimson blur, wrapping around one fighter's cockpit and obscuring the pilot's vision. The fighter veered wildly, colliding with its wingman. Both spiraled toward the desert floor in flames. That's not possible, Avar breathed. How can cloth phase through? The cloak exists partially in another dimension, Strange explained, already targeting the 3rd fighter. Your Force nullification weapons can't affect what isn't entirely in your reality. He sent the shuttle into a sharp turn, putting them on the remaining fighter's tail. Now let's see if your Jedi reflexes are as good as advertised. He yielded the weapon's controls to her. Avar reached out through the Force, letting it guide her aim. The targeting computer couldn't lock onto the shielded fighter, but she didn't need technology. She could feel the ship's trajectory, the intention behind its movements, the precise moment to. She fired. The blast caught the fighter's engine. It spiraled down, trailing smoke but controlled, the pilot ejecting before impact. Avar felt relief. She disabled, not killed. Impressive, Strange said, genuinely approving. Your targeting system is entirely insufficient, but you compensated perfectly. That's what your Force does, isn't it? It gives you certainty in uncertain situations. The Force guides those who listen, Avar said, watching the cloak return to the shuttle, phasing back through the hull to settle on Strange's shoulders. Though I've never seen anything quite like your companion. The cloak's been with me through hell and back, literally. Strange brought the shuttle down in a controlled landing a safe distance from the compound. It has opinions about who deserves protection. The fact that it's tolerating you is high praise. They exited the shuttle into Dalna's arid heat. The compound sat on the horizon, heat shimmer making it waver like a mirage. Avar extended her awareness through the Force, searching for life signatures, intentions, threats. She found chaos, hundreds of minds in the compound radiating fear, anger, and religious fervor. Underneath it all, something else. Something vast and hungry that her Force sense couldn't quite grasp, as if she was trying to perceive a shape that existed in dimensions her mind couldn't process. "You feel it too," Strange said quietly. He'd closed his eyes, hands moving through slow patterns. Golden light traced symbols in the air, diagnostic spells, Avar realized, probing the dimensional barriers. "There's something underneath the compound. Not from your galaxy. Maybe not even from your dimension. What could possibly?" "Herald." The voice echoed across the desert, amplified by technology the path supposedly rejected. Avar turned to see figures emerging from the compound, dozens of them, wearing simple robes but carrying those Force nullification weapons. Leading them was a woman whose presence made Avar's skin crawl despite appearing utterly ordinary. Human, middle-aged, with the kind face of someone's grandmother. "You bring a Jedi here, Herald? To our sanctuary?" Strange's eyes narrowed. "She's talking to me. How does she know?" "You were prophesied," the woman called, approaching with frightening confidence. Her followers maintained a perimeter, weapons ready but not aimed. "The Mother foresaw your arrival, the herald from beyond, who would bring us the truth we've always known. The Force is not alone. Other powers exist, powers that don't require genetic predisposition or Jedi indoctrination." "I'm not your herald," Strange said flatly. "And if you think I'm here to validate your ideology, you're severely mistaken." The woman, this must be the Mother herself, smiled with serene certainty. "You don't understand yet. The Force has deceived this galaxy for millennia, convincing everyone that it is the only cosmic power. But you are living proof of the lie. You wield power without midichlorians, without Jedi approval, without their restrictive codes." She gestured to her followers. "We are the path of the open hand. We believe the Force should be free, untouched, unchanneled, undefiled by sentient manipulation. And you, Herald, will help us free it." Avar stepped forward, her hand resting on her lightsaber hilt. "The Force is not a prisoner. It flows through all life. It is enslaved by those like you," the Mother's voice cracked with sudden fury. "Jedi and Sith both, stealing power that should remain pure. Every time you channel the Force, you pervert its natural state. Every Force user is a thief." She turned back to Strange. "But the Herald's power comes from elsewhere. Clean. Untainted. He will teach us." "I'll teach you nothing." Strange's voice carried absolute authority. "Whatever you're doing underground, whatever you've been summoning through those hyperspace disruptions, it ends now. You've weakened dimensional barriers without understanding the consequences. You've invited things into this galaxy that will devour everything you claim to protect." The Mother's expression didn't change. The smile remained, peaceful and terrifying. "The Herald resists his destiny. The Mother foresaw this too." She raised her hand, and her followers raised their weapons in unison. "We cannot allow the Jedi to interfere. We are so close to our great work. The Force itself will soon be free." "Avar," Strange said quietly, "when I tell you to run, you run. I don't abandon partners. You'll run because I need you alive to warn your council." His hands began moving through rapid gestures, golden light building despite the obvious strain on his face. "What's coming next is going to be very loud, very destructive, and..." The ground exploded. Not from Strange's magic, but from below. Stone and soil erupted upward as something massive tore through the compound's underground levels. Avar felt it through the Force, a presence of such overwhelming wrongness that her mind rejected the sensation entirely. It was vast, ancient, and utterly alien to everything she understood about life and consciousness. The path's followers screamed, not in terror, but in religious ecstasy. "It comes. The leveler rises. The force will be cleansed. Through the settling dust, Avar saw it. A creature, no, that word was insufficient. An entity that seemed to absorb light and force energy simultaneously. It had no fixed shape, constantly shifting between configurations that hurt to perceive directly. Tendrils extended from its mass, each one radiating the same force nullification energy as the weapons. Where they touched the ground, the very soil seemed to die, becoming gray and lifeless. Shumagoratha's spawn, Strange breathed in horror. They actually summoned it. A dimensional parasite that feeds on cosmic energy. He looked at Avar with desperate intensity. It will consume your force. Every force-sensitive being in range will be drained and killed. This entire planet will become a dead zone, and then it will spread to others. The mother stood before her summoned god with arms raised in triumph. Behold! The leveler will cleanse the force from this galaxy. No more Jedi. No more Sith. Only pure, untouched cosmic energy, free from sentient corruption. Avar ignited her lightsaber, brilliant green blade humming to life, though she had no idea what good it would do against something that existed partially outside normal space. We have to stop it. We have to contain it. Strange hands moved through the most complex patterns Avar had yet seen, golden light forming massive geometric constructs that stretched toward the entity. I'll try to seal it back in its dimensional prison. You need to disrupt whatever ritual is anchoring it here. The mother, she's the focus. Break her concentration and the anchor weakens. There are 30 armed zealots between me and her. Then I suggest you move fast. Strange constructs slammed into the entity, not damaging it but wrapping around its form like chains. The creature thrashed, its wrongness intensifying. I can hold it for maybe 5 minutes before my power gives out entirely. Go. Avar ran. The force flooded her body, enhancing speed and reflexes beyond human capability. Blaster fire, normal energy weapons now, not force nullification, tracked her movement. She deflected bolts with her lightsaber, the familiar rhythm of Form 3 combat bringing clarity to chaos. 3 followers blocked her path. She swept past them, using force push to scatter them without killing. The Jedi way. Even now, even here, life was precious. The mother turned toward her, still smiling that terrible serene smile. The Jedi champion. Of course you would resist. You cannot imagine a galaxy without your power, can you? You are addicted to the Force like spice runners are addicted to their product. You're killing people. Avar shouted, cutting down another zealot who threw himself in her path, disarming strike, non-lethal, controlled. That thing will consume everything. It will consume the Force, the mother corrected. The galaxy will survive. Life will survive. Only power will die. Isn't that what you claim to serve? Life itself? Behind them, strange battle with the entity escalated. Golden constructs strained against thrashing tendrils. Avar felt the force weakening in the area, not extinguished, but diminished, as if someone was slowly draining an ocean. Her connection felt sluggish, harder to access. She reached the mother and struck, not with her lightsaber, but with the force itself, a stunning technique designed to render opponents unconscious without harm. The mother staggered but didn't fall. Around her neck, Avar noticed for the first time, hung a crystal that pulsed with sickly light, some kind of force artifact perverted into protection against force attacks. You'll have to kill me, Jedi, the mother said softly. Can you do that? Can you kill an unarmed opponent? Doesn't that violate your precious code? Avar hesitated. 1 second. 2. It was enough. The entity broke free of strange constructs with a sound like reality tearing. It surged toward them both, tendrils extending, and Avar felt her connection to the Force sever completely as the creature's power washed over her. For the first time in her life, she was alone in her own mind. No force. No connection. Just terrifying, absolute silence. No, she whispered. And then Strange was there, interposing himself between Avar and the entity. His hands moved through gestures so rapid they blurred, creating barriers of pure golden light that held against the tide of emptiness. You want dimensional energy, he shouted at the creature. Then try eating something that fights back. His power erupted, not weakened, not diminished, but blazing with intensity Avar hadn't seen since his arrival. The cloak extended around him like wings, and for a moment Dr. Stephen Strange looked like something divine and terrible, a sorcerer in his element, fighting with the full fury of someone who had protected realities from threats just like this. But Avar could see the cost. Blood dripped from Strange's nose. His hands trembled violently. He was burning through his life force to channel power his diminished state couldn't sustain. He was going to kill himself to save her. No. Avar forced herself to move despite the absence of the force. She was still Avar Kriss. Still a warrior. Still someone who trained for decades in combat. She didn't need the force to remember how to fight. She charged the mother, lightsaber forgotten, and simply tackled the woman to the ground. Her hands found the corrupted crystal and tore it free. The mother's concentration shattered. The entity wavered. Its form destabilized. And Strange's magic found purchase, wrapping around the creature in chains of golden light that dragged it backward, downward, through a portal he'd torn in reality itself, a gateway back to whatever dimensional hell it had crawled from. Seal the breach. Strange gasped. Avar, I need the force, to close it properly. But she had no force. The entity had drained her completely. Then she felt it. A trickle, returning. Then a stream. The force flowing back into her awareness like water filling a dry riverbed. Not from within, but from Strange himself, his magic was channeling the force, creating a bridge, giving back what the entity had stolen. Avar reached out through the restored connection, found Strange's mind, brilliant and fractured and burning with determination, and together they closed the breach. Magic and force intertwined, sealing the dimensional gateway so thoroughly that nothing would ever open it again. The entity's final shriek echoed across dimensions as it was pulled back into exile. Silence fell across Dalna's desert. Strange collapsed. Avar caught him, lowering him gently to the scorched ground. His breathing was ragged, his eyes unfocused. Around them, the path's followers stood in shock, their faith shattered by the failure of their summoned god. You saved my life, Avar said quietly. You saved everyone, Strange managed. Broke the anchor. Smart. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. Might have overdone it slightly, with the power expenditure. Rest. I'll call for medical. Already healing. He closed his eyes. Sorcerer Supreme benefits package includes regeneration. Just need few minutes. Avar held him and reached out through the force to assess the situation. The mother lay unconscious nearby. The compound was in ruins. Dozens of zealots were surrendering or fleeing. In the distance, she sensed Republic security forces approaching, likely alerted by the energy signatures from the battle. They'd won. At terrible cost, with desperate improvisation, but they'd won. And Dr. Stephen Strange had proven something profound, magic and the Force could work together. They weren't enemies. They were partners in protecting life across all realities. Partners, she whispered, echoing their agreement. Strange's eyes opened slightly. Told you. I was right, about the council being slow. Despite everything, Avar laughed. The hyperspace journey back to Starlight Beacon was tense with unspoken questions. Dr. Strange spent most of the trip in the shuttle's medical bay, not seriously injured, but exhausted in ways that Bacta couldn't heal. Avar had watched his body repair itself through what he called mystical regeneration, flesh knitting and energy restoring at a pace that would make Jedi healers envious. But the cost lingered in his eyes, a weariness that spoke of power pushed beyond safe limits. The path of the open-hand prisoners filled the shuttle's holding cells. The mother sat in silence, her serene mask finally cracked, revealing the fanatic underneath. Republic security had arrived within hours of the battle, taking custody of the compound and beginning the grim work of cataloging what the cult had accomplished. Preliminary reports suggested they'd been conducting dimensional experiments for months, using stolen hyperspace technology and knowledge from sources still unknown. Avar meditated in the cockpit, trying to process what she'd experienced. The absence of the Force, even for those few terrible minutes, had shown her something she'd never truly understood. She'd spent her entire life connected to that cosmic energy, trusting it as absolutely as she trusted gravity or the existence of stars. To have it severed, even temporarily, was like losing a sense she hadn't known could be lost. And Strange had given it back. Through his magic, through an act of partnership that transcended their different origins, he'd restored what the entity had stolen. The shuttle's comm system chimed. Avar activated it, and Master Stellan Gios's hologram materialized, his expression severe. Master Kriss. I've reviewed the preliminary reports from Dalna. They are disturbing. Master Gios, I can explain. You acted without council authorization, Stellan continued, his tone measured but disappointed. You took an unknown entity, someone we'd agreed to supervise, on an unsanctioned mission into potentially hostile territory. You engaged in combat that could have resulted in your death and created a significant diplomatic incident with what the Republic is now calling a misguided religious movement. Avar felt heat rise in her cheeks. With respect, Master, the path of the open hand summoned a dimensional parasite that would have consumed every Force-sensitive being on Dalna and spread from there. They weren't misguided, they were attempting genocide through ignorance. And you determined this how? By trusting the word of an outsider whose very presence disrupts the Force. By trusting my own judgment, Avar said firmly. And by trusting a partner who proved willing to sacrifice himself to protect this galaxy. Dr. Strange nearly died sealing that breach, Master. He used his own life force to restore my connection to the Force after the entity drained me. Whatever else he is, he's not our enemy. Stellan's hologram flickered slightly, a sign of the vast distance between them. The Council is divided, Avar. Some see Dr. Strange as a potential ally. Others view him as a threat that simply hasn't revealed its true nature yet. The fact remains that dimensional breaches and entities from beyond our reality only became our problem after he arrived. He didn't cause this, Avar protested. The pattern has been weakening dimensional barriers for months through their hyperspace experiments. Strange's arrival was a consequence, not a cause. Perhaps. Stellan's expression softened marginally. Or perhaps his arrival accelerated processes that would have taken years to manifest. We simply don't know. That uncertainty is why the Council has made a decision. He paused. When you return to Starlight Beacon, Dr. Strange will be formally interviewed by the full Council. We will determine whether he poses a threat to the Republic and the Jedi Order. Depending on that assessment, he may be asked to leave the galaxy entirely. You can't be serious. He's stranded here. His connection to his home dimension is severed. Then he will need to find another way home, Stellan said, not unkindly. Avar, I understand you feel gratitude toward him. But the High Republic has flourished for 2 centuries because the Jedi maintain vigilance against threats. Dr. Strange represents a form of power we cannot predict or control. That makes him dangerous, regardless of his intentions. The hologram dissipated before Avar could respond. She sat in the cockpit, anger and frustration warring with her disciplined Jedi training. The Council wasn't wrong to be cautious. Strange did represent something unprecedented. But they were also being blind to the larger pattern, the threats that existed beyond the Force, the inadequacy of their current understanding. Your Council fears me. Strange's voice came from behind her. He'd emerged from the medical bay, looking more himself now, the cloak draped across his shoulders, his hands steady despite the faint tremor that never quite disappeared. I heard the conversation. Force users have exceptional hearing, apparently, or your shuttle's privacy systems are inadequate. Both, probably, Avar admitted. She turned to face him. I'm sorry. You saved countless lives on Dalna, and this is the gratitude you receive. Strange shrugged, settling into the co-pilot's seat. I've dealt with institutional paranoia before. After I became Sorcerer Supreme, various governments on Earth tried to contain, study, or recruit me. When they realized I answered to higher powers than presidents or generals, some tried to eliminate me. He gazed out at the hyperspace tunnel streaming past. Fear of the unknown is rational. Your council's response is actually quite measured compared to some reactions I've encountered. You're being remarkably understanding about potentially being exiled from the only reality you can currently access. Oh, I'm furious, Strange said mildly. But fury without purpose is just noise. I'm calculating options. His gray-blue eyes turned to her. Question: how absolute is Jedi Council authority? Can they actually compel me to leave if I refuse? Avar considered carefully. The Council leads the Jedi Order, but we're not a government. We serve the Republic. If you refuse to leave voluntarily, they'd likely request Republic assistance in encouraging your departure. Deportation via military force. Charming. Strange's fingers drummed on the armrest, a nervous habit, Avar had noticed, left over from his days as a surgeon. And if I were to, say, demonstrate that I'm not a threat but rather an asset? If I could prove that my presence makes the galaxy safer rather than more dangerous? That would require the Council to trust you. Which requires time and repeated demonstration of good faith. Time is exactly what we don't have. Strange pulled up the shuttle's navigation display, overlaying it with data he'd apparently downloaded from the archives. I've been analyzing the hyperspace disruption patterns during our trip. The path of the open hand wasn't working alone, their technology was too sophisticated, their dimensional knowledge too specific. Someone else provided them with the tools and information to summon that entity. Avar leaned forward, studying the data. Who? I don't know yet. But look at this. Strange highlighted several data points. The hyperspace technology the path used, it's similar to what your pirates, the Nihil, employ. Unstable hyperspace corridors, unpredictable emergence points. But refined. Weaponized in ways that require understanding of dimensional mechanics. His expression darkened. Someone in this galaxy knows about the multiverse, Avar. Someone has been preparing for dimensional incursions long before I arrived. The path was just one experiment. You're saying there's a larger conspiracy. I'm saying there's always a larger conspiracy. Strange closed the display. In my experience, dimensional threats don't manifest randomly. They're invited by those who think they can control power beyond their comprehension. The path believed they were freeing the Force. I guarantee whoever gave them their tools had different goals entirely. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it prepared to exit hyperspace. Starlight beacon would appear in moments. Avar reached out through the Force, feeling the familiar signatures of thousands of Jedi and Republic personnel going about their duties. Home. Safety. Yet now, after Dalna, even that certainty felt fragile. What will you do if the Council orders you to leave? She asked quietly. Strange was silent for a long moment. I took an oath, Master Kriss. To protect my reality from mystical and supernatural threats. That oath doesn't stop applying just because I'm stranded in a different universe. He met her gaze. If dimensional barriers are being deliberately weakened in your galaxy, I will find who's responsible and stop them. Council permission or not. Because if they succeed in opening a true gateway, what came through on Dalna will look like a pleasant dream compared to what's waiting in the spaces between realities. That sounds like you're prepared to go rogue. That sounds like I'm prepared to do what's necessary. The cloak stirred on his shoulders, as if in agreement. But I'd much prefer to work with the Jedi rather than around them. You're good people, even if your leadership is frustratingly risk-averse. So I'm hoping your council sees sense. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace. Starlight Beacon appeared before them, a magnificent station shaped like a torch, its upper spire burning with artificial light visible across star systems. A symbol of the High Republic's golden age. A promise that light would always push back darkness. Strange studied it with the analytical eye of someone evaluating defensive capabilities. Impressive station. Vulnerable to dimensional incursion at 17 distinct points, but impressive. How can you possibly know? I see dimensional fault lines the way you see the Force. Strange pointed at sections of the station. Those areas where your hull plating intersects with hyperspace relay equipment create microfractures in local spacetime. Normally harmless. But if someone knew how to exploit them, they could open portals directly into your most secure areas. Avar felt cold. The Council needs to know this. Which brings us back to the central question, will they listen? Strange stood as Avar guided the shuttle toward Starlight's docking bay. In a few hours, I'll be standing before your leadership, defending my right to remain in this galaxy. I'm going to need you to advocate for me, Avar. Not because we're friends, we barely know each other, but because you understand what's at stake. You felt what that entity could do. You know there are threats your order isn't prepared for. I'll speak for you, Avar promised. But Dr. Strange, you need to understand how the Jedi operate. We value humility, service, and collective wisdom. If you walk into that council chamber acting like you're superior to everyone present, I'll be appropriately diplomatic, Strange assured her. Then, with a slight smile that suggested he rarely managed actual diplomacy, added, I've learned from past mistakes. Mostly. Sometimes. On occasion. The shuttle settled into its designated bay. Through the viewport, Avar saw a full security detail waiting, not hostile, but clearly prepared for trouble. Nevertheless, we prefer it remained in secure storage during your testimony. Avar watched Strange's internal calculation, pride versus pragmatism. Finally, with obvious reluctance, he removed the eye and handed it to Stellan. Without it, he looked somehow more vulnerable, despite the cloak and his obvious power. If that's damaged or lost, I'll be extremely disappointed, Strange said quietly. It will be safe, Stellan assured him. Now, if you'll follow me, the council awaits. They walked through Starlight Beacon's corridors, past Jedi and Republic personnel who stopped to stare at the strange man in the crimson cloak. Avar felt the weight of their attention, their curiosity, and fear. Strange had become a symbol himself, proof that the galaxy was larger and stranger than the High Republic wanted to acknowledge. As they approached the council chamber, Avar reached out through the Force, trying to sense the mood of the assembled masters. She found division, sharp disagreements, philosophical conflicts, and underneath it all, genuine fear. The Jedi Council, guardians of peace and justice for 2 centuries, was terrified of what Dr. Stephen Strange represented. They're going to ask you to leave, Avar whispered as the doors began to open. I know, Strange replied. But I'm going to make them understand why that would be a mistake. One way or another. The doors opened fully, revealing the full council, 20 Jedi Masters seated in judgment, the accumulated wisdom of the Order focused on one man who didn't belong to their galaxy. Dr. Stephen Strange walked forward to face them, the cloak billowing behind him like a challenge. And in the spaces between dimensions, something vast and patient felt the ripples of his presence and began, slowly, to pay attention. The council chamber felt different from within. Avar had stood before these masters countless times, but always as one of them, a trusted member of the Order. Now, standing beside Dr. Strange as an advocate rather than a supplicant, she saw the chamber through new eyes. The semicircle of seats created a psychological effect, placing those before the council in a position of vulnerability. Power dynamics made visible through architecture. Strange noticed too. She saw it in the slight tightening around his eyes, the way his posture shifted subtly, not defensive, but resistant to intimidation. He'd faced judgment before, she realized. Probably from authorities who considered themselves his superiors. Master Stellan took his seat among the council. The chamber doors sealed with a hydraulic hiss that sounded uncomfortably final. Dr. Stephen Strange. It was Master Yariel Poof who spoke first, his elongated Cormian neck giving him a serpentine quality as he regarded the sorcerer. You stand before the Jedi High Council to answer for actions taken on Dalna and to address concerns regarding your continued presence in our galaxy. Do you understand the gravity of this proceeding? I understand you're deciding whether to help me or hinder me, Strange replied evenly. What I don't understand is why you're wasting time on bureaucratic proceedings when dimensional threats continue to grow. Several council members stiffened at his tone. Avar winced internally. This was exactly the approach she'd warned him against. Perhaps you could explain these threats, Master Nib Asek said, her voice carrying forced patience. We have only your word that dimensional incursions represent a danger beyond what the Jedi Order has successfully handled for millennia. Strange's hands moved through a gesture, restrained, minimal, but producing a holographic display that materialized in the chamber's center without touching any of their technology. The image showed the galaxy, but overlaid with structures the council couldn't normally see, fault lines, weak points, areas where the barriers between dimensions had worn thin. This is your galaxy as I perceive it, Strange said. The bright areas are stable, normal spacetime, functioning as intended. The dark areas are dimensional vulnerabilities. Notice how they cluster along your major hyperspace routes. The council leaned forward, studying the display. Avar felt their surprise through the Force. They'd never seen the galaxy mapped this way. Every hyperspace jump creates a microfracture in dimensional barriers, Strange continued. Individually, they're harmless, they heal in microseconds. But you've been using hyperspace for thousands of years. Billions of jumps. Trillions. The cumulative damage has created weak points that entities from other dimensions can exploit. He manipulated the display, highlighting Dalna. The path of the open hand didn't discover dimensional summoning on their own. Someone gave them the knowledge, someone who understood these vulnerabilities and how to weaponize them. You claim knowledge of our galaxy after 3 days, Master Stellan observed. How is this possible? Because I'm a master of the mystic arts who spent years studying dimensional mechanics across 600,000 catalogued realities. Strange's voice carried absolute certainty. This isn't arrogance, Master Geos. It's expertise. In my universe, I'm the foremost authority on dimensional threats. The fact that you've never encountered such things doesn't mean they don't exist, it means you've been fortunate until now. Or it means you brought these threats with you, suggested Master Rana Kant, a human woman whose Force presence radiated suspicion. Before your arrival, we had no dimensional entities, no summoned parasites, no reality breaches. Your presence may have drawn these dangers to our galaxy. Strange was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more vulnerable. You might be right. My arrival could have acted as a beacon, advertising your galaxy's existence to entities that wouldn't have noticed otherwise. He met Rana's gaze directly. That possibility terrifies me, Master Kant. Because if I've endangered your reality simply by existing here, then I'm responsible for protecting it. That's not optional. That's not negotiable. It's who I am. Avar felt the sincerity radiating from him, not through the Force, but through simple human connection. This was the man beneath the sorcerer, the doctor who'd taken an oath to protect life. Pretty words, Master Rana said, unmoved. But insufficient proof of trustworthiness. Then let me offer proof through action. Strange dismissed his holographic display. Master Kriss mentioned your station has 17-dimensional vulnerability points. I can seal them, reinforce the barriers so that even if someone tried to open a portal here, they'd fail. It would take me approximately 6 hours of work, channeling magic through barriers I'll create at each weak point. You could observe the entire process. Verify that I'm helping rather than sabotaging. The council exchanged glances. Avar felt their debate through the Force, some intrigued, others resistant, all uncertain. "Why would you offer such a service?" asked Master Estela Maru, the station's Kashurian coordinator. "What do you gain?" "Your trust," Strange said bluntly. "And permission to remain in the galaxy long enough to find whoever gave the path their dimensional knowledge. Because that entity, person, organization, whatever, is still out there, still working towards some goal that required weakening the barriers between realities. I need to stop them before they succeed." "And if we deny you permission?" Master Stellan asked. "If we determine that your presence poses greater risk than benefit?" Strange's expression hardened. The cloak stirred on his shoulders. "Then I'll work alone. I won't leave sentient beings to face dimensional threats without protection just because their leadership is too cautious to accept help. I've been called arrogant, Master Geos, and perhaps I am. But I've also saved my reality 14 times from existential threats. I know my capabilities and my responsibilities. I won't abandon either just because they make you uncomfortable." "That sounds like refusal to comply with Jedi authority," Master Rana said coldly. "That sounds like a man with principles," Avar interjected. She felt the council's attention shift to her, some supportive, others disapproving. "Masters, I stood beside Dr. Strange on Dalna. I watched him nearly sacrifice himself to save me and everyone on that planet. I felt his magic restore my connection to the Force after the entity drained me. Whatever else he is, he's not our enemy." She took a breath. "The galaxy is changing. We're encountering threats the High Republic wasn't designed to handle. We can either adapt by accepting help from those with different expertise, or we can cling to orthodoxy and face these threats unprepared." "Master Kriss makes a compelling argument," said Master Creighton's son, a human Jedi whose reputation for pragmatism was legendary. "But accepting Strange's help sets a precedent. If we allow one wielder of non-force powers to operate within Republic space, what's to stop others from demanding the same privilege? The fact that I'm stranded here involuntarily, not setting up a competing power structure," Strange said dryly. "I don't want to replace the Jedi Order. I don't even want to join it. I want to solve the immediate crisis and, eventually, find a way home. If you help me achieve those goals, I'll be grateful and cooperative. If you obstruct me, I'll work around you. Those are your options." The chamber fell silent. Avar could feel the weight of the decision pressing on the council. They were being forced to acknowledge that the Force wasn't infinite, that the Jedi weren't omniscient, that the galaxy contained mysteries they'd never imagined. It was Master Stellan who finally spoke. "We will need time to deliberate. Dr. Strange, you will be provided quarters on Starlight Beacon while we reach our decision. You will not attempt to access sensitive areas or interfere with station operations. Master Kriss will be assigned as your liaison." "Probation officer," Strange translated. "I understand. We will reconvene in 3 hours with our decision." Stellan's gaze swept across the council, gathering silent confirmation. "This session is concluded." The doors opened. Security personnel waited outside, more numerous than before. Strange walked between them without apparent concern, though Avar noticed the way the cloak had positioned itself for quick defense if needed. They were escorted to guest quarters in Starlight's civilian section, comfortable but clearly monitored. As soon as the doors closed behind them, Strange turned to Avar. "That went better than I expected." "You threatened the council," Avar said incredulously. "You explicitly told them you'd defy their authority." "I told them the truth." Strange moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. "Deception would have been worse. They would have sensed it through your force, grown more suspicious, and made decisions based on false information." He glanced back at her. "I'm not a diplomat, Master Kriss. I'm a surgeon who became a sorcerer. I deal in clarity and precision, not political maneuvering. If that costs me their approval, so be it." Avar joined him at the viewport. Outside, Republic ships moved through space in orderly patterns: commerce, defense, exploration. The High Republic's machinery working as designed. But strange holographic display had shown her the cracks beneath that order, the vulnerabilities no one else could see. "What will you do if they order you to leave?" she asked. "Seal the station's vulnerabilities anyway," Strange said immediately. "Whether they trust me or not, those weak points are dangerous. Then I'll take a ship, borrowed, stolen, doesn't matter, and hunt down whoever's orchestrating these dimensional incursions." He smiled slightly. "I've operated without official sanction before. It's not ideal, but it's manageable. You'd be a fugitive. I'd be effective." He turned to face her fully. "Avar, I appreciate what you did in there. Speaking for me. Challenging your own counsel. That took courage. I spoke the truth, as you did." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her since Dalna. "When you restored my Force connection, how? Your magic and the Force are supposed to be incompatible." Strange's expression became thoughtful. "They're not incompatible. They're complementary. I've been studying the sensation since it happened. When I channeled my magic to return your Force connection, I wasn't replacing one power with another. I was creating a bridge. My dimensional magic provided structure, and the Force, which exists everywhere in your galaxy, flowed through that structure back into you." His hands moved through a subtle gesture, producing weak golden light. "It's like, imagine water and electricity. Different forms of power, dangerous when mixed incorrectly. But if you understand both, you can use electricity to pump water where it needs to go. You're saying magic can channel the Force. I'm saying a skilled practitioner can create resonance between different forms of cosmic power." The golden light brightened slightly. "Every day I spend here, I understand your Force better. It's teaching me, in a way. Showing me patterns. Eventually, I believe I could become a hybrid, a Force sorcerer who commands both dimensional magic and your galaxy's cosmic energy." The implications staggered Avar. "That's never been done. In all of Jedi history, no one has successfully combined the Force with another power source. In all of your history, no one from another universe has been stranded here," Strange pointed out. "I'm an unprecedented situation requiring unprecedented solutions." He dispersed the light. "But it's a long-term project. Right now, I need to convince your council I'm worth the risk." A chime sounded at the door, 2 hours earlier than the promised 3-hour deliberation. Avar opened it to find Master Nib Asek standing outside, alone and visibly troubled. "Master Kriss. Dr. Strange. The council has reached a preliminary consensus." She entered the quarters, the door sealing behind her. "But before we formalize the decision, I need to speak with you privately. What I'm about to share violates council confidentiality, but I believe you both need to know." Strange's attention sharpened. "I'm listening." Nib took a breath. "The council is divided between 3 positions. 1/3 wants you gone immediately, they view you as an existential threat. 1/3 wants you contained and studied, they see you as a phenomenon to understand. The final third, which includes Master Stellan and myself, wants to cautiously engage you as a potential asset. So I'm being expelled by committee," Strange said flatly. "Not necessarily." Nib pulled up a holographic display, classified files, Avar realized with shock. "We discovered something in our deeper archives. Records from 500 years ago, sealed by the council of that era. A sect of Force users called the Reality Weavers who claimed to manipulate dimensional barriers. The Jedi Order suppressed them, declaring their practices heretical and dangerous to the fabric of reality." Strange leaned forward, studying the ancient records. "What happened to them?" "They vanished. The official records say they disbanded. But there are gaps. Inconsistencies suggesting something more violent occurred." Nib's expression was troubled. Dr. Strange, the Jedi Order has encountered dimensional manipulation before. We destroyed those who practiced it. That's why some masters fear you. You represent a power we've deemed too dangerous to exist. Then why are you telling me this? Strange asked. Because I've studied those old records more carefully than most, Nib said. The reality weavers weren't trying to summon entities or open hostile portals. They were trying to seal dimensional barriers, to protect the galaxy from exactly the threats you've described. And the Jedi Order eliminated them because we couldn't understand or control their methods. She met Strange's gaze. We may have destroyed the very people who could have prevented the current crisis. Avar felt the weight of that revelation. The Jedi Order, guardians of peace and justice, had potentially created this vulnerability through their own fear and orthodoxy. Master Nib, Avar said carefully, why are you sharing this with us? Because the reality weavers left something behind. Hidden in the deepest levels of this station's archives, a holocron containing their knowledge of dimensional manipulation. It's sealed with protections I cannot bypass. But Dr. Strange might be able to access it. Nib pulled up a schematic showing Starlight's lower levels. If you could recover that knowledge, if you could prove that dimensional magic can protect rather than threaten, it might convince the Council to trust you. Or it might give them concrete evidence to justify eliminating me, Strange observed. That's the risk, Nib admitted. But it's also an opportunity. The reality weaver's knowledge could be the key to finding whoever's orchestrating these incursions. And it might teach you how to bridge your magic and our force more effectively. Strange studied the schematic, his mind clearly calculating odds and options. Finally, he looked at Avar. What do you think? Avar reached out through the force, seeking guidance. She found only questions, but also a sense of rightness, as if this was the path they were meant to walk. I think we need every advantage we can get. If the reality weaver's knowledge exists, we should recover it. Then we'll need to move quickly, Strange said. Before the Council's deliberation ends and they impose restrictions. He turned to Nib. Master Asek, if this goes wrong, if I trigger security protocols or accidentally release something dangerous, make sure you're not implicated. Blame me entirely. Nib smiled sadly. Dr. Strange, I've been a Jedi for 40 years. I know when to take responsibility for my choices. If I'm helping you access forbidden knowledge, that's on me. She moved to the door. The security rotation changes in 15 minutes. That's your window. The archive sublevel is restricted, but Master Kriss's credentials should grant access. She left without another word, the door sealing behind her. Strange looked at Avar. Last chance to back out. Once we do this, you're committed, possibly branded as a rebel by your own order. I stopped following orders without question on Dalna, Avar said. The Force led me to partner with you. I'm trusting that guidance. Then let's go steal some forbidden knowledge from your order's basement. Strange moved toward the door, the cloak settling into position. In my experience, the best secrets are always kept where they're hardest to reach. They slipped into the corridor, two figures bound by necessity and growing trust, heading toward knowledge the Jedi Order had buried 5 centuries ago. Behind them, the Council continued its deliberation, unaware that their decision was becoming irrelevant with each passing moment. And in the hidden depths of Starlight Beacon, something waited, ancient knowledge preserved through half a millennium, ready to reveal truths the galaxy had forgotten. The archive's sublevels existed in perpetual twilight. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across corridors that hadn't seen regular foot traffic in decades. Avar's credentials opened the first 3 security checkpoints without issue, but she could feel the weight of restriction growing with each sealed door they passed. The Jedi Order preserved dangerous knowledge here, Sith artifacts, dark side holocrons, research deemed too perilous for general access. Dr. Strange moved through the restricted areas with the confidence of someone who'd infiltrated secure locations before. His eyes tracked security systems with professional assessment, and twice he gestured for Avar to stop while he traced patterns in the air, spells that deflected sensor sweeps, she realized, making them invisible to electronic surveillance. "You've done this before," Avar observed quietly. "The Camartage Library has restricted sections too," Strange replied, his hands weaving another detection avoidance spell. "Every repository of mystical knowledge eventually acquires dangerous texts that need to be locked away. The trick is remembering that dangerous often means powerful enough to threaten authority." He glanced at her. "Not always, but often enough to warrant skepticism about what gets restricted and why." They descended another level. The air grew colder, and Avar felt something through the force, a presence, or perhaps an absence. The sublevels felt hollow, as if the force itself had been partially withdrawn from these spaces. "There," Strange said, pointing to a door marked with ancient Jedi symbols. "That room. I can feel dimensional resonance through the walls. Something inside is interacting with spacetime in ways your technology shouldn't be capable of." Avar's credentials failed on this lock. The door remained sealed, displaying a message in Old High Galactic, "By order of the Council, sealed indefinitely. Master-level override required." "I don't have master-level clearance for this section," Avar admitted. "Then we do this the old-fashioned way." Strange's hands moved through complex gestures, golden light tracing geometric patterns across the door's surface. The magic probed the locking mechanism, not breaking it, but understanding it, finding harmonics and resonances. After 30 seconds, the lock disengaged with a soft click. The door opened onto a small chamber lined with shelves. Most held sealed containers, artifacts too dangerous to display openly. But at the chamber's center, on a pedestal of carved stone, sat a holocron unlike any Avar had seen before. Traditional Jedi holocrons were pyramidal, their surfaces etched with geometric precision. This one was wrong. Its shape shifted as she watched, existing simultaneously as a cube, a pyramid, and a tesseract, a four-dimensional object forcing itself into three-dimensional space. Looking at it directly made her eyes water. A reality weaver holocron, Strange breathed, approaching it with reverence usually reserved for sacred objects. "It exists partially in another dimension. That's why it hurts to look at. Your brain is trying to process geometry it wasn't designed to comprehend." He reached toward it, then hesitated. "Avar, I need you to understand something. If this holocron contains what I think it does, genuine dimensional manipulation techniques, accessing it might trigger defenses. The reality weavers wouldn't have left their knowledge unprotected." "What kind of defenses?" "The kind that test whether the person accessing them is worthy." Strange's expression was grim. "In my tradition, powerful artifacts judge those who seek their knowledge. They create trials, mental, physical, or spiritual challenges that reveal the seeker's true nature. If you fail, the consequences range from psychic trauma to death." Avar felt the weight of the decision. They'd come this far, violated council protocols, accessed forbidden archives. Turning back now would mean all the risk had been for nothing. "Can you face the trial?" she asked. "I've faced worse." Strange's hand steadied, the tremor vanishing as he centered himself. "But I won't access it without your consent. You're implicated in this. You deserve a say in whether we proceed." Avar reached out through the force, seeking guidance. The holocron registered as a void in her awareness, not dark side corruption, but something orthogonal to the force entirely. Yet beneath that void, she sensed purpose. The reality weavers had created this artifact to preserve their knowledge against the day it would be needed again. That day was now. "Open it," Avar said. Strange placed both hands on the holocron. His magic flared, golden light interacting with the artifact's shifting surfaces. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the holocron activated, projecting a hologram that made Avar's force sense scream in confusion. The figure was humanoid but wrong, its proportions shifted, limbs existing in configurations that couldn't naturally occur. When it spoke, the voice came from multiple directions simultaneously, as if the speaker existed in several locations at once. Seeker of reality's secrets, you stand at the threshold of forbidden knowledge. The Jedi Order declared our wisdom heresy and destroyed our practitioners. We preserved this holocron so that truth might survive orthodoxy's purge. The figure's eyes, too many eyes, arranged in patterns that hurt to perceive, focused on Strange. You are not of this galaxy. We foresaw one like you might come. Speak, outsider. Why should we trust our knowledge to one who commands powers we never imagined? Strange didn't flinch from the impossible figure. Because I've spent years protecting my reality from dimensional threats. Because I understand that cosmic power requires responsibility, not domination. And because your galaxy is facing exactly the dangers you tried to prevent, dimensional barriers weakening, entities from beyond preparing to invade. I need your knowledge to stop them. Pretty words. Many spoke prettily before betraying their principles. The holocron pulsed. We offer a trial. You will face a challenge that reveals your true nature. Only those who prove worthy may access our teachings. Do you accept? I accept. Wait, Avar started, but it was too late. The chamber disappeared. Avar found herself standing in a vast space that shouldn't exist, a void between dimensions where fragments of realities drifted like islands in an infinite sea. Strange stood beside her, his cloak billowing in winds that came from no physical source. A psychic projection, Strange said, studying their surroundings with professional interest. We're still physically in the chamber, but our consciousnesses have been pulled into a constructed mindscape. Clever. Before them materialized 3 doorways, each radiating different energy. The left door glowed with golden light, warm, inviting, safe. The center door was gray and featureless, neutral, unassuming. The right door pulsed with crimson darkness, dangerous, forbidden, wrong in a way that made Avar's force sense recoil. The reality weaver's voice echoed through the void, 3 paths lie before you, sorcerer. Choose. Choose what? Avar demanded. You haven't explained the test. That is the test, Strange said quietly. Each door represents a choice, a philosophy, a path forward. The golden door, that's conventional heroism. Safety, approval, working within established systems. The gray door is neutrality, observation without interference, knowledge without action. The crimson door, he studied it carefully. That's the path of pragmatic darkness. Accepting corruption as a tool, believing that ends justify means. So you choose the golden door, Avar said. That's clearly the right answer. Is it? Strange didn't move toward any door. Every trial I've faced that presented obvious, right answers was testing whether I'd blindly follow apparent virtue without understanding the deeper question. He turned to the holocron's presence. You're not testing which door I choose. You're testing whether I understand why the choice matters. The void rippled. The reality weaver's voice carried approval, elaborate. The golden door represents working within authority, accepting that institutions and collective wisdom supersede individual judgment. The Jedi Order's way. But you were destroyed by that very system when your knowledge threatened their monopoly on cosmic power. Strange moved to the center door. The gray door represents abdication, gathering knowledge but refusing to act, claiming neutrality in the face of existential threats. Academic cowardice dressed as objectivity. He approached the crimson door, not touching it but studying it closely. The dark door represents corruption justified by necessity. Using evil means for good ends, accepting that protecting others sometimes requires becoming what you fight against. The most seductive trap, I know because I've fallen into it. Avar felt strange pain beneath those words, memories of choices made, prices paid, lines crossed in the name of saving his reality. So which do you choose? The reality weaver asked. None of them. Strange stepped back from all 3 doors. Because this is a false choice. You're testing whether I'll accept limited options or whether I have the courage to forge my own path. The reality weavers were destroyed because they tried to work within the Jedi Order's framework while practicing dimensional magic that challenged Jedi orthodoxy. You chose the golden door and were betrayed by the very system you served. The void shuddered. The three doors began to dissolve. The lesson you learned, the knowledge you preserved, isn't about which path to choose. It's about understanding that cosmic responsibility sometimes requires standing outside established power structures. Not as a rebel seeking destruction, but as a guardian operating by principles higher than institutional approval. Strange's voice carried absolute conviction. I won't choose your doors because I don't need your permission to do what's necessary. I need your knowledge to do it more effectively. Silence filled the void. Then the reality weaver appeared before them, no longer a shifting, impossible figure, but a simple human woman with kind eyes and scars that suggested a lifetime of battles. You understand, she said softly. The Jedi Council demanded we choose, abandon our research or be branded heretics. We tried to compromise, to work within their system. That choice killed us. She looked at Avar. And you, young Jedi. You stand with the outsider. Do you understand the path you're walking? The Jedi Order will view your choices as betrayal. Avar felt the weight of the question. Everything she'd been raised to believe emphasized collective wisdom, council authority, the importance of working within established structures. But she'd also been taught to trust the Force, and the Force had led her to partner with Strange, to challenge her own council, to stand in this forbidden place seeking knowledge her order had tried to destroy. I understand, Avar said. And I choose this path anyway. Because protecting life matters more than protecting institutions. The reality weaver smiled, sad and proud simultaneously. Then you are both worthy. She gestured, and the void filled with images, techniques, formulas, dimensional mathematics that made Avar's mind ache. We preserved our knowledge of dimensional barriers, of reality manipulation, of forces that exist beyond the Force itself. Take this wisdom. Use it to protect what we could not save. Strange absorbed the information with the focus of a master student. Avar watched knowledge flow into him, not just data, but understanding. His hands began moving through patterns that incorporated both his mystical gestures and the reality weaver's techniques. The golden light of his magic took on new qualities, creating structures that seemed more stable, more real. One final warning, the reality weaver said as the mindscape began to dissolve. We discovered something in our research, a truth so dangerous that we sealed it separately from our main teachings. There is an entity, ancient beyond measure, that exists in the spaces between dimensions. We called it the Nameless. It has been attempting to enter your galaxy for millennia, but dimensional barriers held it at bay. Her expression filled with dread. If those barriers continue to weaken, the Nameless will break through. And when it does, neither the Force nor dimensional magic will be sufficient to stop it. You will need something greater, a union of powers that has never existed. How do we create that union? Strange asked urgently. We never discovered the answer. We died before completing that research. The reality weaver's form became translucent. But we believe the key lies in understanding that the Force and dimensional magic are not separate powers, they are different expressions of the same fundamental reality. Find that truth, and you may yet save this galaxy. The mindscape collapsed. Avar gasped, finding herself back in the sublevel chamber. Strange stood beside her, his hands still on the holocron. The artifact had stopped shifting, it now appeared as a simple pyramid, its knowledge fully transferred. How long were we gone? Avar asked, disoriented. Subjectively. 20 minutes. In actual time. Strange checked the chrono on the wall. 47 seconds. Time dilation in psychic spaces, consciousness experiences events faster than physical reality processes them. The holocron darkened, its purpose fulfilled. Strange carefully lifted it from the pedestal. "We're taking it with us," he said at Avar's questioning look. "There might be additional information sealed in deeper layers. And I won't leave knowledge this valuable where the Council could destroy it in a fit of orthodox fervor." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the sublevels. Red emergency lighting flooded the corridors. "They know we're here," Avar said, reaching for her lightsaber. "Or they know something else." Strange pulled up his holographic display, the one showing dimensional weak points. New fractures had appeared across the map, clusters of vulnerability that hadn't existed hours ago. Someone's accelerating the barrier degradation. Whatever they're planning, they're moving into the final phase. They ran for the exit. Security doors sealed ahead of them, but strange magic forced them open with bursts of golden light far stronger than Avar had seen before. The Reality Weaver knowledge had enhanced his capabilities significantly. He was becoming what the holocron promised, a true force sorcerer combining dimensional magic with force manipulation. They burst into the main archives to find a full security detail waiting, and Master Stellan standing at their head, his expression torn between anger and disappointment. "Master Kriss. Dr. Strange. You violated Council protocols, accessed forbidden archives, and triggered emergency systems." Stellan's hand rested on his lightsaber hilt. "I have to place you both under arrest pending. We don't have time for this." Strange interrupted, his display showing the escalating dimensional fractures. "Look at this data. Someone is actively tearing down dimensional barriers across the entire outer rim. In approximately 6 hours, multiple breaches will open simultaneously. Whatever entities are waiting beyond will flood through, and your galaxy will be overrun by dimensional parasites like the one on Dalna, except there will be hundreds of them." Stellan studied the display, his Jedi training warring with the evidence before him. "How do you know this?" "Because I just absorbed 500 years of research from the Reality Weavers you destroyed," Strange said bluntly. "They understood dimensional mechanics better than any sorcerer in my reality. They mapped the patterns, predicted this exact scenario. And they left instructions for how to stop it, if we act now. The Reality Weavers were heretics. The Reality Weavers were right." Avar stepped forward. "Master Stellan, I know we violated protocols. I know we betrayed Council trust. But everything Strange warned about is coming true. We either help him stop this, or we watch the High Republic fall to threats we're not equipped to handle." Stellan looked between them, his former student and the outsider who disrupted everything the Jedi thought they understood about the galaxy. Through the Force, Avar felt his internal struggle, duty versus pragmatism, orthodoxy versus survival. Finally, he deactivated his lightsaber. "What do you need?" Strange's expression showed surprised respect. "A ship. Your fastest one. I need to reach the Nihil staging area and the Occlusion zone, that's where the dimensional summoning will be completed. And I need Master Kriss with me. She's the only Jedi who understands what we're facing. You're asking me to send you into the most dangerous region of space with one of our best Jedi, based on knowledge from a forbidden holocron, to stop a threat that only you can perceive." Stellan smiled without humor. "Master Avar, do you trust him?" "With my life," Avar said without hesitation. "Then go. I'll deal with the Council." Stellan stepped aside, allowing them passage. "But Dr. Strange, understand this, if you're wrong, if this is a deception, I will hunt you across the galaxy and ensure you face justice. Are we clear?" "Perfectly." Strange moved past him, then paused. "Master Geos, for what it's worth, you made the right choice. History will remember this moment as when the Jedi Order chose adaptation over extinction. Or when I doomed us through misplaced trust," Stellan replied. "Time will tell." Avar and Strange raced through Starlight Beacon toward the docking bays. Behind them, Avar felt the Council's collective awareness focusing on their escape, shock, anger, betrayal. She'd burned her bridges with the Jedi Order. There would be no going back to how things were. But ahead, in the darkness between stars, something vast and hungry was preparing to break through into reality. And only the impossible partnership between a Jedi and a sorcerer stood between the High Republic and annihilation. 6 hours, Strange said as they reached their ship. We have 6 hours to stop the end of your galaxy. Then we'd better not waste time, Avar replied, firing up the engines. They launched into hyperspace, racing toward the occlusion zone and a confrontation that would determine whether the Force and dimensional magic could truly work as one. The Nameless was waiting. The occlusion zone earned its name from the perpetual sensor interference that made navigation treacherous and communication impossible. Clouds of ionized particles from ancient supernovas created a region where even hyperspace lanes became unstable. The Nihil had claimed it as their territory precisely because the Republic couldn't effectively patrol areas their technology couldn't map. Dr. Strange stood at the navigation console of their borrowed Republic cruiser, his hands moving through gestures that left trails of golden light across the sensor displays. He wasn't using the ship's systems, he was using magic to perceive what technology couldn't detect. There, he said, pointing to a section of space that registered as empty on every scanner. That's where they're gathering. I can feel the dimensional resonance, like a wound in reality that's being deliberately widened. Avar guided the ship toward the coordinates, trusting Strange's perception over her instruments. Through the Force, she felt something too, not the emptiness of the void, but wrongness. As if space itself was sick in that region, infected with something that didn't belong. How many? She asked. At least 24 ships. Mixed signatures, some Nihil raiders, but others I don't recognize. And something else, Strange's expression darkened. There's a massive structure at the center. Not a space station, it's phasing in and out of normal space. A dimensional anchor point they're constructing in real time. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the anomaly. What Avar saw made her breath catch. The structure was impossible. It existed as a skeletal framework that seemed to be built from solidified spacetime itself, glowing with energy that made her eyes water. Ships swarmed around it like insects around a corpse, Nihil raiders with their distinctive patchwork hulls, but also sleeker vessels bearing no identification. At the structure's heart pulsed something that registered on her Force sense as absolute negation, a tear in reality that led somewhere else, somewhere wrong. They're almost finished, Strange said quietly. Once that anchor stabilizes, the barriers between dimensions will collapse in a cascading failure across the entire sector. Everything waiting on the other side will pour through. Can you seal it from here? Not from this distance, not with the power I currently have. Strange turned to face her. I need to get aboard that structure and disrupt the anchor from within. But that means fighting through their fleet and whatever defenses they've installed. Avar studied the tactical situation with a commander's eye. 24 ships against their single cruiser. Poor odds by any measure. But she'd faced worse during the emergences, fought against overwhelming force with nothing but skill, courage, and the Force to guide her. We'll need a distraction, she said. Something that draws their attention while we slip through. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Strange's hands began moving through rapid gestures, golden light building around him. The cloak can phase through dimensions. If I channel enough power through it, I can make this entire ship briefly exist outside normal space, invisible to their sensors and able to pass through solid matter. That sounds incredibly dangerous. It is. And it requires me to extend my magic through the entire vessel, which means I'll be completely vulnerable during transit. If they detect us, if I lose concentration, we'll be torn apart by dimensional shear. Strange met her gaze steadily. Which means I'll need you to pilot and defend us simultaneously. Can you do that? Avar reached out through the Force, feeling the ship's systems, the space around them, the distant threat of the anchor point. She could sense trajectories before they formed, intentions before they manifested. The Force would guide her hands if she trusted it completely. I can do it, she said. Strange nodded and placed his hands on the ship's hull. The cloak extended from his shoulders, spreading like wings until it touched the walls, floor, and ceiling. Golden light traced patterns across every surface, and Avar felt reality shift around them. The ship phased, not disappearing, but becoming translucent. Through the viewports, the stars took on a strange quality, as if she was seeing them through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her stomach lurched with vertigo. "Go," Strange said through gritted teeth. "Maximum speed. Straight for the anchor point. Don't stop for anything." Avar engaged the engines. The ship surged forward, passing through the Nihil perimeter like a ghost. She could see their vessels on sensors, but they showed no reaction. The Republic cruiser was invisible to them, existing in a state between dimensions. They were halfway to the anchor point when everything went wrong. A ship materialized directly in their path, not from hyperspace, but from another dimension entirely. It was massive, organic-looking, its hull covered in structures that pulsed like exposed organs. Avar recognized it from Strange's descriptions, a dimensional predator's vessel, something that hunted across realities. "They have dimensional sensors," Strange shouted. "They can see us even while we're phased." The predator ship opened fire with weapons that bent space itself. Avar threw the cruiser into evasive maneuvers, but the shots followed impossible trajectories, bending around shields, passing through armor. One blast clipped their starboard engine. Alarms shrieked as the damaged system failed. "I'm losing the phase," Strange gasped. Blood dripped from his nose as he pushed his magic beyond its limits. 30 seconds before we're fully visible. Avar reached out through the force, not to the enemy ship, but to the damaged engine. She could feel the fusion core destabilizing, plasma conduits rupturing. With careful precision, she used the force to contain the breach, not fixing it, but preventing catastrophic failure for just a few seconds longer. 20 seconds. The anchor point loomed ahead, a skeletal structure the size of a small moon. Avar aimed directly for its center, where the dimensional tear pulsed with sickly light. 15 seconds. More predator ships materialized around them. They'd realized the threat and were moving to intercept. Energy weapons fired from a dozen angles. 10 seconds. "Avar, we're not going to make it." Strange's voice was strained to breaking. "I can't maintain the phase and shield us simultaneously." "Then don't." Avar cut power to the sublights and engaged emergency retro thrusters. The sudden deceleration threw them forward in their seats. Behind them, the pursuing predator ships shot past, unable to adjust quickly enough to the unexpected maneuver. 5 seconds. She reignited the engines at full burn, sending them into a spinning dive toward the anchor point superstructure. The phase collapsed. They slammed back into normal space, fully visible and vulnerable. Every enemy ship locked onto them simultaneously. "Abandon ship," Avar commanded. She grabbed Strange and pulled him toward the escape pod. "What about? Trust me." They sealed themselves in the pod and ejected just as the cruiser's damaged engine finally detonated. The explosion ripped through the vessel, sending debris in all directions, including toward the anchor point's delicate superstructure. Avar used the force to guide their pod's trajectory through the chaos. Predator ships swarmed toward the explosion, trying to intercept escape pods, not realizing the wreckage itself was the real weapon. Chunks of the destroyed cruiser slammed into the anchor's skeletal framework. The structure shuddered but held. Avar felt despair, it wasn't enough. Then Strange thrust his hands forward, channeling what remained of his power into one focused strike. Golden energy lanced from the pod, striking the wreckage and igniting the cruiser's remaining antimatter reserves. The secondary explosion was blinding. The anchor point's framework bent, twisted, and fractured. The dimensional tear at its center became unstable, fluctuating wildly. Their pod crashed into a landing platform on the anchor's lower section. Avar kicked the door open, lightsaber igniting as enemy forces converged on their position. "How long do we have?" she demanded. Strange pulled himself from the pod, visibly exhausted. The anchor's damaged but not destroyed. They can still complete the ritual if given time. We need to reach the control center and shut it down from within. He gestured toward a structure at the platform's far end. There. That's where they're channeling the summoning energy. Between them and that structure stood at least 50 armed hostiles, Nihil marauders, dimensional cultists in strange armor, and things that barely qualified as humanoid. Some wore the force nullification technology from Dalna. Others radiated wrongness that suggested they'd already been corrupted by whatever waited beyond the dimensional barrier. 50 against 2, Avar observed. I've had worse odds. Have you really? No, but I'm trying to stay positive. Despite everything, Strange laughed, a brief, genuine sound that spoke of shared danger and unexpected camaraderie. Then let's give them a fight they'll remember. They charged together. Avar moved through the enemy forces like a storm given form. Her lightsaber deflected blaster bolts, redirecting them with Form V precision. The Force guided every movement. She knew where attacks would come from before they manifested, positioned herself perfectly to counter multiple threats simultaneously. 3 cultists rushed her with vibroblades. She disarmed 2, used the Force to hurl the third into his companions. Beside her, Strange fought with a combination of martial arts and reality-warping magic that made Avar's trained combat look conventional by comparison. He created portals that redirected enemy fire back at its source. His cloak became a weapon, wrapping around opponents and hurling them from the platform. When a group tried to surround him, he created a barrier of golden energy that expanded outward, sending them flying. But they were still outnumbered. For every enemy they defeated, more emerged from the anchor's interior. This isn't sustainable. Avar shouted, deflecting another volley of blaster fire. I know. Strange created a shield that protected them both momentarily. We need to reach the control center before. The dimensional tear pulsed. Something massive pressed against the barrier from the other side. It's coming through early, Strange said with horror. They're sacrificing stability for speed. In 90 seconds, that thing will breach into your reality whether the anchor is complete or not. What thing? The Nameless. The entity the reality weavers warned us about. The apex predator of dimensional spaces. Strange's face was pale. Avar, I've faced gods and demons, but even I don't know if I can stop something like that. Not in my current state. Avar felt it through the Force now, the approaching presence. It was vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure, and utterly alien to everything she understood about consciousness. Where the Force connected all life, this thing existed in the spaces between connection. It was the void given will and hunger. Then we do it together, Avar said. You channel your magic, I channel the Force. We become what the reality weavers dreamed of, a union of powers. We've never done that before. We don't know if it's even possible. We proved it's possible on Dalna when you restored my Force connection. Avar grabbed his hand. We've been partners from the moment you arrived in this galaxy. Let's show everyone what that partnership can achieve. Strange looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the absolute conviction in her eyes. He squeezed her hand once, then nodded. On 3, he said. 1. The enemy forces charged, sensing their prey's desperation. 2. The dimensional tear widened. Something tentacled and wrong began pushing through, its form impossible to fully perceive. 3. They released their combined power. Golden magic and emerald force energy intertwined, creating something that had never existed in any reality, a fusion of dimensional manipulation and cosmic life force. The energy erupted from them like a tidal wave, washing over the platform and the enemy forces. Where it touched, the corrupted enemies simply dissolved, not violently, but gently, as if they were dreams fading upon waking. The dimensional rifts that had weakened them sealed instantly. The Nameless emergence halted as barriers that had been crumbling suddenly reinforced themselves. Strange and Avar walked forward through the stunned survivors, their combined power making them untouchable. They reached the control center, a crystalline structure pulsing with stolen force energy and dimensional magic working in terrible harmony. Together, Strange said. They placed their hands on the crystal simultaneously. Magic and force flowed through them into the structure, not destroying it but transforming it. The dimensional anchor that had been designed to tear down barriers became a seal, permanently reinforcing the boundary between realities in this sector. The Nameless shrieked, a sound that existed across dimensions, expressing fury and frustration. The tear began closing, pulling the entity back into its prison. No! A voice screamed across the platform. Avar turned to see a figure in ornate armor, the eye of the Nihil, Marchion Ro, staggering from the control center's entrance. You've ruined everything. The power we were promised. The freedom from the Force's tyranny. You were promised lies, Strange said coldly. The Nameless doesn't grant power, it consumes everything. You would have been its first meal. Marchion raised a weapon, one of the force nullification blasters. He fired at Avar point blank. The bolt struck her, and dissipated harmlessly. The fusion of magic and force that surrounded them was too powerful to be nullified by technology designed for only one form of cosmic energy. You don't understand, Marchion said desperately. The Jedi control everything through the Force. They decide who has power, who matters. The Nameless would have freed us from their monopoly. By killing everyone. Avar stepped forward, her lightsaber still ignited. The Force isn't a monopoly, Marchion. It's a gift available to anyone willing to listen. You chose chaos and destruction because you lacked the discipline to master what the Force offered. I should kill you, Marchion spat. Both of you. You and your sorcerer have destroyed the Nihil's greatest plan. You're going to try, Strange said. And you're going to fail. Then you're going to stand trial for attempting genocide on a galactic scale. His magic bound Marchion in golden chains. Your story ends here. The dimensional tear sealed completely. The Nameless was gone, trapped once more behind barriers that would hold for millennia. The anchor structure began to collapse, its purpose fulfilled in reverse. Time to leave, Avar said. They found an intact Nihil raider and commandeered it, Strange's magic overriding the security systems. As they pulled away from the disintegrating anchor, Avar looked back at what they'd accomplished. Together, they'd stopped an existential threat. Together, they'd proven that the Force and dimensional magic could work in harmony. Together, they'd created something new, a fusion of powers that the galaxy had never seen. Master Kriss, Strange said as they entered hyperspace, you just helped save your galaxy. How does it feel? Avar smiled, exhausted but triumphant. It feels like the beginning of something important. The Jedi Order thinks they understand the Force completely. Today we proved there's so much more to discover. And they're going to hate us for it, Strange added. Probably, Avar agreed. But we'll deal with that together. Partners. Partners, Strange confirmed. Behind them, the occlusion zone returned to its normal state of dangerous chaos. But the dimensional threat had been neutralized. The Nameless remained imprisoned. And the High Republic had survived, not through Jedi power alone, but through the unprecedented cooperation between two cosmic forces. The galaxy would never be the same. The journey back to Starlight Beacon took 3 days. 3 days during which Avar and Strange rested, recovered, and prepared for the reckoning they both knew was coming. The captured Nihil raider was cramped and uncomfortable, but it gave them time to process what they'd accomplished, and what it meant. Strange spent hours meditating, his hands moving through patterns that incorporated both mystical gestures and what Avar recognized as Force meditation techniques. He was integrating the two systems, creating something hybrid that drew strength from both traditions. I can feel it now, he said on the second day, his eyes still closed. The Force isn't rejecting my magic anymore. It's curious about it. Eager to explore how dimensional energy and life force energy can complement each other. He opened his eyes, and Avar saw wonder there, the expression of someone discovering entirely new frontiers. In my reality, I was Sorcerer Supreme. Here, I could become something unprecedented, the first Force sorcerer in your galaxy's history. The Council won't see it as an achievement, Avar warned. They'll see it as corruption. Perversion of the Force through foreign power. Then the Council has a very limited imagination. Strange created a small construct, golden magic shaped by Force manipulation into a perfect sphere that rotated slowly between his hands. This is what the reality weavers were trying to show the Jedi Order 500 years ago. The Force isn't diminished by incorporating other forms of cosmic power. It's enhanced. Made more versatile, more capable of protecting life across all possible threats. Avar watched the sphere, feeling its resonance through the Force. It was beautiful, a perfect marriage of two philosophies, two approaches to manipulating reality. But she understood her order well enough to know that beauty wouldn't be sufficient justification. They'll want to study you, she said quietly. Contain you. Make sure you're not a threat to their understanding of how the universe works. Let them try. The sphere dissipated. I didn't survive becoming Sorcerer Supreme, defeating Dormammu, and holding back multiversal incursions just to be imprisoned by well-meaning religious authorities. Strange's expression softened slightly. But I'd prefer not to fight your order, Avar. I've come to respect the Jedi, even if I disagree with their orthodoxy. You're trying to protect people. That's admirable, even when your methods are frustratingly conservative. On the third day, they received a transmission from Starlight Beacon. Master Stellan Geos appeared in hologram form, his expression carefully neutral. Master Kriss. Dr. Strange. We've been monitoring your approach. The Council is aware that you destroyed a dimensional anchor point in the Occlusion zone and captured the Eye of the Nihil. The Republic is grateful, though confused about the specifics of what occurred. We stopped an existential threat, Strange said bluntly. An entity called the Nameless was attempting to breach into your reality. We sealed the dimensional barrier permanently. You're welcome. Stellan's jaw tightened at Strange's tone, but he continued professionally. The Council has convened to determine what happens next. Your actions violated numerous protocols, but the results speak for themselves. We're divided on how to proceed. Divided how? Avar asked. 1/3 wants you both arrested and charged with insubordination. 1/3 wants to grant you formal recognition for saving the Republic. The final third, Stellan paused, choosing his words carefully, wants to understand what you've discovered. The fusion of force and dimensional magic that multiple witnesses reported seeing during your battle. Strange and Avar exchanged glances. This was the moment that would define everything. We'll submit to Council judgment, Avar said. We never intended to undermine Jedi authority. We acted to protect lives when time didn't allow for proper authorization. Your intentions are noted, Stellan said. When you dock, you'll be escorted directly to the Council chamber. Master Kriss, you should know, there are calls for your expulsion from the Order. What you've done, it's unprecedented. Partnering with someone who commands non-force powers, accessing forbidden archives, operating completely outside command structure. Some masters see you as a hero. Others see you as a dangerous maverick who's set a terrible precedent. Avar felt the weight of that statement. She'd spent her entire adult life as a Jedi, serving the Order with absolute devotion. The possibility of expulsion should have terrified her. Instead, she felt clarity. She'd chosen her path. She would accept the consequences. I understand, she said simply. The hologram dissipated. Strange looked at her with concern. You're risking everything for this partnership, he said. For me. Why? Because it's right. Avar moved to the viewport, looking at the stars streaming past. The Jedi Order has guided the galaxy for millennia. We've done tremendous good. But we've also become rigid, convinced that our understanding of the Force is complete. The reality weavers showed us 500 years ago that there's more to cosmic power than midichlorians and lightsabers. We destroyed them for that truth. She turned back to Strange. I won't let the Order make that mistake again. Even if it costs me everything. Strange was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried rare vulnerability. In my reality, I lost everything to become Sorcerer Supreme. My medical career, my fortune, my hands' full functionality, relationships I valued. I thought I understood sacrifice. He met her gaze. But you're risking your entire identity, everything you've built your life around, for a principle. That's remarkable, Avar. I want you to know I see it. I appreciate it. We're partners, Avar said simply. That means we face consequences together. They dropped out of hyperspace at Starlight Beacon. The magnificent station hung against the stars, its torch-like spire burning with symbolic hope. Republic cruisers flanked their approach, not threatening, but clearly ready to intercept if they attempted to flee. They're not taking chances, Strange observed. Would you, if you were them? Probably not. They docked without incident. The security detail that met them was substantial, 20 Jedi Knights, fully armed and alert. But at their head stood Master Stellan, and his expression was more thoughtful than hostile. Master Kriss. Dr. Strange. On behalf of the Jedi Council, I'm formally requesting that you surrender your weapons and accompany us to the Council Chamber. Requesting, not demanding. Strange noted. You saved the Republic, Stellan said. That earns you respect, even from those who fear what you represent. Please. Let's do this properly. Avar deactivated her lightsaber and handed it to Stellan. It felt wrong, a Jedi's lightsaber was their life, but she trusted that this was temporary. Strange hesitated, then gestured. The cloak of levitation lifted from his shoulders and folded itself neatly, settling into his arms like a sleeping cat. The cloak is sentient. It won't tolerate being locked in a weapons locker. I'll carry it, but it won't interfere unless I'm directly threatened. Acceptable? Stellan nodded. Acceptable. They walked through Starlight Beacon together, flanked by guards but treated more like guests than prisoners. Avar felt the attention of thousands of minds through the Force, Jedi and civilians alike watching their passage, curious about the partnership that had defied the Council and saved the galaxy. The Council chamber doors opened. The full assembly waited, 20 masters, the accumulated wisdom and power of the Jedi Order. Avar had stood before them before, but never like this. Never as someone who deliberately violated their authority and emerged victorious despite their concerns. Master Stellan took his seat. The doors sealed. Master Avar Kriss. Dr. Stephen Strange. It was Master Yariel Poof who spoke, his voice carrying the weight of formal judgment. You stand accused of multiple violations of Jedi protocols. Unauthorized access to forbidden archives. Operation outside command authority. Partnership with an entity whose powers the Council deemed potentially threatening. How do you answer these charges? Avar stepped forward. Guilty on all counts, Master Poof. I violated protocols deliberately, knowing the consequences. I did so because the threat we faced required immediate action. I chose saving lives over following procedure. And you, Dr. Strange? Master Poof turned his attention to the sorcerer. You encouraged this violation. You led Master Kriss into forbidden areas, accessed knowledge meant to remain sealed, and operated with complete disregard for Jedi authority. That's accurate, Strange said without apology. I also stopped a dimensional entity from consuming every Force-sensitive being in the Outer Rim, sealed a barrier that will protect your galaxy for millennia, and captured the Nihil's leader. If that's the result of disregarding your authority, perhaps your authority needs reconsideration. Multiple council members tensed. Avar felt the force ripple with anger, fear, and, surprisingly, some amusement from a few of the more progressive masters. "You are arrogant," Master Rana Kant said coldly. "I'm competent," Strange corrected. "There's a difference. Arrogance is claiming superiority without evidence. I have evidence. Your galaxy is still here because I knew how to seal dimensional breaches. That's not arrogance. That's demonstrable expertise. Expertise that came at the cost of our protocols and centuries of accumulated wisdom about what knowledge is too dangerous to access. Your accumulated wisdom nearly got everyone killed." Strange's voice sharpened. "The reality weavers tried to warn you 500 years ago that dimensional barriers were weakening. You destroyed them instead of listening. That decision created the vulnerability the Nihil exploited. If you'd preserved their knowledge instead of suppressing it, none of this would have happened." The chamber erupted in argument. Some masters defended the ancient decision to eliminate the reality weavers. Others questioned whether that choice had indeed been a mistake. Through the force, Avar felt the order fracturing, old certainties challenged, new possibilities forcing themselves into consideration. Master Stellan raised his hand, calling for silence. "This debate can continue indefinitely. We need a decision. Dr. Strange, the question before us is simple: can the Jedi Order trust you? Can we allow you to remain in the galaxy, teaching others this fusion of force and dimensional magic? Or do you represent a threat that will ultimately undermine everything we've built?" Strange looked at each council member in turn. When he spoke, his voice carried conviction without aggression. "I don't want to undermine the Jedi Order. I want to expand it. Show you that the Force is more versatile than you've imagined. But I won't beg for permission to exist in your galaxy. I'm here, whether you approve or not. The real question isn't whether you trust me, it's whether you're brave enough to evolve." He paused. "The galaxy is changing. Dimensional threats will increase as hyperspace travel continues to weaken barriers. You can adapt by incorporating new forms of power, or you can cling to orthodoxy and watch your order become obsolete. That's your choice, not mine." "And what of you, Master Kriss?" Master Stellan asked quietly. "You've heard the charges. You've seen the division your actions have created. Do you believe you made the right choice?" Avar reached out through the Force, feeling the currents of destiny and possibility. She'd spent 3 days considering this moment, preparing her response. Now, standing before the council that had shaped her entire life, she knew exactly what to say. "Yes, I made the right choice. Not because I'm wiser than the council, but because the Force guided me. Every step of this journey, from partnering with Dr. Strange to accessing the Reality Weaver's holocron to sealing the dimensional barrier, felt right through the Force. Not easy. Not comfortable. But right." She met Master Stellan's gaze. "The Jedi serve the Force, not the other way around. If the Force led me to discover new truths about cosmic power, then ignoring that guidance would be the true violation of my oath." The council fell silent. Through the Force, Avar felt them grappling with her argument. She'd used their own philosophy against them, claimed that following the Force's guidance mattered more than following institutional rules. Finally, Master Creighton's son spoke. "I propose a compromise. Dr. Strange remains in the galaxy under Jedi supervision. Master Kriss continues as his liaison and partner. They work together to document this fusion of force and dimensional magic, teaching us what they've discovered. In exchange, they operate with council oversight. No more independent missions without authorization." "That sounds like you're trying to contain something you're afraid of," Strange observed. "That sounds like we're trying to learn from someone who has expertise we lack," Creighton corrected. "There's a difference. We can either view you as a threat to be eliminated or a teacher with knowledge worth preserving. I vote for the latter." Other council members nodded, not all, but enough. The consensus was forming. "Very well," Master Stellan said. "Dr. Strange, you are granted provisional status within the Republic. You will not be expelled, but you will be monitored. Master Kriss, you are placed on probationary status. Your title and rank are preserved, but your independence is curtailed. You will report directly to this council on all matters related to dimensional magic and its interaction with the Force." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even particularly satisfying. But it was survival, permission to continue their work, albeit under watchful eyes. "Acceptable," Avar said. Strange nodded. "I can work with that. Then this matter is concluded." Master Stellan stood. "The Republic owes you both a debt of gratitude, despite your unorthodox methods. The eye of the Nihil's capture alone justifies leniency. Go. Rest. Recover. We'll discuss the specifics of your new arrangement in the coming days." They were dismissed. As they left the council chamber, Avar felt exhaustion crash over her like a wave. 3 days of tension, fear, and uncertainty finally releasing. "That went better than expected," Strange said once they were in the corridor. "They're going to watch us constantly. Question every decision. Demand justification for every technique we develop. I've worked under worse conditions." Strange summoned the cloak back onto his shoulders. It settled into place with what almost seemed like contentment. "At least they're not trying to kill us or lock us up. That's progress." Avar laughed despite herself. "Your standards for success are remarkably low." "My standards are realistic," Strange corrected. "We saved the galaxy, proved that force and magic can work together, and survived institutional judgment. By any measure, that's a victory." They walked through Starlight Beacon, no longer escorted by guards but still drawing attention. Avar felt the curiosity of those they passed, questions, wonder, and yes, some fear. They'd become symbols of something larger than themselves. The partnership that challenged centuries of Jedi orthodoxy. "What happens now?" Avar asked. "Now we do the hard work," Strange said. "Teaching others what we've learned. Documenting techniques for combining force and dimensional magic. Building a framework so that this knowledge doesn't die with us." He glanced at her. "And finding whoever gave the Nihil their dimensional technology. Because March Ion Ro wasn't smart enough to design those systems himself. Someone else is out there, someone with deep knowledge of multiversal mechanics. Another mystery to solve. Always another mystery." Strange smiled, not his usual sardonic expression, but something warmer. "But at least we're solving them together. Partners facing the unknown." "Partners," Avar agreed. They reached the observation deck, a vast transparent dome offering an unobstructed view of the stars. Strange stood silently, looking out at a galaxy that was now his home whether he wanted it to be or not. "Do you think you'll ever get back?" Avar asked quietly. "To your own reality?" Strange was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. The breach that brought me here is sealed. My connection to Earth's dimensional network is severed. It's possible I'm stranded permanently." He turned to look at her. "But if I am, this isn't a terrible place to be trapped. Your galaxy has threats worth fighting, people worth protecting, and apparently a cosmic power source I never knew existed. As prisons go, it's remarkably spacious. Is that acceptance or resignation? It's pragmatism. I can't change my circumstances, but I can choose how I respond to them. I choose to make this partnership work. To teach your order what I know. To protect this galaxy the way I protected my own." His expression became determined. "And maybe, eventually, to find a way home. But that's a long-term project. For now, I'm exactly where I need to be." Avar felt the truth in his words through the Force. Strange had found purpose here, unexpected as it was. He'd gone from guardian of one reality to guardian of another, and he'd accepted that transition with the adaptability that had made him Sorcerer Supreme. "Then welcome to the High Republic, Dr. Strange," Avar said formally. "May the Force be with you." Strange smiled. "And may dimensional barriers remain intact. Because if they don't, you've got a sorcerer who knows how to fix them." They stood together on the observation deck, watching stars that burned in constellations Strange had never seen from Earth. Behind them, the Council debated the implications of what they'd witnessed. Across the galaxy, Republic citizens celebrated the defeat of the Nihil without understanding how close they'd come to annihilation. But Avar and Strange knew. They'd seen the Nameless pressing against reality's barriers. They'd felt the universe trembling on the edge of dimensional collapse. And they'd stopped it through partnership, through the unprecedented fusion of force and magic. The High Republic had been saved. But more than that, it had been changed. The Jedi Order had been forced to acknowledge that the Force wasn't the only cosmic power worthy of study and respect. And Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, had become the first Force sorcerer of a galaxy far, far away. The future stretched before them, uncertain, challenging, full of mysteries to solve and threats to face. They would face them together. 6 months after the Occlusion Zone incident, Starlight Beacon had transformed in subtle but significant ways. The archives now contained a new section, restricted, but not forbidden, dedicated to dimensional mechanics and the fusion of force and mystical arts. Dr. Stephen Strange's lectures drew crowds of Jedi scholars, though many came more from cautious curiosity than genuine acceptance. Avar Kriss stood in the training hall, watching Strange demonstrate a technique to a group of Padawans. His hands moved through precise gestures while he explained the theory underlying dimensional manipulation. "The Force connects all living things," Strange was saying, creating a construct of golden light between his palms. "Dimensional magic connects all realities. When you combine them, you create bridges that can channel power in ways neither system achieves alone." The construct solidified into a perfect sphere. This is a basic Force-enhanced shield. It exists partially in another dimension, which makes it resistant to conventional weapons and Force attacks simultaneously. One Padawan, a young Twi'lek girl named Scylla, raised her hand hesitantly. "Master Strange, isn't it dangerous to mix the Force with foreign powers? My instructor says the Force should be kept pure." Strange's expression softened. Avar had watched him learn patience over the past months, understanding that changing centuries of orthodoxy required gentleness, not confrontation. "Your instructor is expressing legitimate concern," Strange said. "The Force is sacred to the Jedi Order. Introducing new elements always carries risk. But consider this," he dispersed the shield and created a new construct, this one purely golden light without Force enhancement. "This is dimensional magic alone. Powerful, but unstable in your galaxy because it's cut off from its normal energy sources." The construct flickered weakly. Then he created another construct, emerald green with the unmistakable resonance of pure Force energy. "This is the Force alone. Also powerful, but limited by the practitioner's midichlorian count and training." Finally, he merged both constructs. The golden and green energies intertwined, creating something that glowed with brilliant intensity, more stable than either component alone. This is synthesis. Not corruption, not dilution, but evolution. The Force remains the Force. The magic remains magic. But together, they achieve what neither could separately. Scylla studied the combined construct with wonder. "It's beautiful. It's functional," Strange corrected, though his tone was kind. "Beauty is a bonus. What matters is that this fusion gives you tools to face threats that pure Force training can't handle. Dimensional entities, reality warpers, threats that exist outside normal space-time, these require approaches your traditional training hasn't prepared you for." Master Nib Asek, observing from the hall's edge, stepped forward. "And that's the core question, isn't it? Are we preparing for threats that may never materialize, or are we adapting to a galaxy that's genuinely changing?" "Both," Strange said without hesitation. The barriers between dimensions are thinner than they've ever been. Hyperspace travel continues to create microfractures. Eventually, something else will notice the vulnerability and attempt to breach through. When that happens, not if, but when, the Jedi Order needs practitioners who understand dimensional mechanics. Nib nodded thoughtfully. She'd become one of Strange's strongest advocates on the Council, arguing that his knowledge represented opportunity rather than threat. Continue your demonstration, Doctor. I'm eager to see the advanced techniques you've developed. The lecture continued for another hour. Avar watched the Padawan's reactions shift from skepticism to fascination as Strange demonstrated increasingly complex applications. He created portals that could redirect attacks, shields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and even a brief demonstration of astral projection, separating his consciousness from his body in a way that mirrored Jedi meditation but operated on different principles. When the session ended, the Padawans departed with animated discussions about what they'd witnessed. Sila lingered, approaching Strange with obvious nervousness. Master Strange, could you teach me more? Privately. My instructor says I shouldn't pursue dimensional magic, but I feel like the Force is guiding me toward it. Strange glanced at Avar, silently asking for permission. She nodded. This was exactly what they'd hoped for, Jedi showing genuine interest in learning rather than merely tolerating Strange's presence. The Force guiding you is exactly the right reason to pursue knowledge, Strange said gently. But you need to understand something, Sila. Learning dimensional magic requires discipline that goes beyond Jedi training. It's not about midi-chlorian counts or lightsaber forms. It's about understanding reality at a fundamental level and having the willpower to reshape it without losing yourself in the process. I understand, Sila said eagerly. I want to understand. I want to learn. Then we'll start with meditation, Strange decided. Same principle as Jedi meditation, but focused on perceiving dimensional boundaries rather than sensing life force. Come find me tomorrow during the meditation hour. We'll begin then. Sila's face lit with joy. She bowed formally, to Strange first, then to Avar, and practically ran from the training hall. Once they were alone, Avar moved to stand beside Strange. You've come a long way from threatening the Council 6 months ago. I've learned when to push and when to guide, Strange admitted. These Jedi, they're good people trying to protect the galaxy with the tools they understand. I can't force them to accept new ideas. I can only demonstrate that those ideas work and let them draw their own conclusions. He looked at her. You taught me that. Watching how you navigate the Order's politics, how you advocate without alienating. It's been educational. Dr. Strange admitting he learned something. I should record this moment. Don't get used to it. But he was smiling, a genuine expression that Avar had seen more frequently as the months passed. Strange was adapting to the galaxy, finding his place within it. They walked through Starlight Beacon's corridors together, a routine they'd established over the past months. Their partnership had evolved from desperate necessity into genuine friendship. They challenged each other, Strange pushing Avar to question Jedi orthodoxy, Avar teaching Strange the value of institutional wisdom and collective decision-making. Master Kriss, Dr. Strange. Master Stellan approached from a side corridor, his expression serious. The Council has received troubling reports. We need your expertise. They followed him to a secure briefing room where holographic displays showed star charts and incident reports. Avar felt a chill as she recognized the pattern. 3 ships have disappeared in the past week, Stellan explained, highlighting sectors on the map. All in different regions, all along major hyperspace routes. Republic investigators found debris from 2 vessels, but the damage signatures don't match any known weapons. Strange studied the data with immediate intensity. Show me the debris analysis. Molecular composition, energy residue, everything you have. Stellan pulled up detailed scans. Strange's hands moved through diagnostic gestures, creating his own holographic overlay that analyzed the information through dimensional rather than physical metrics. Dimensional shear, he said after a moment. These ships didn't explode or get destroyed by weapons. They were torn apart by exposure to raw dimensional energy. He looked at Stellan with concern. Someone is experimenting with dimensional weaponry. Using hyperspace corridors as testing grounds. The Nihil are scattered, Avar said. March Ion Row is in Republic custody. Who else would have access to this technology? That's the question, isn't it? Strange manipulated the star chart, highlighting commonalities between the three incidents. Whoever's doing this has sophisticated understanding of dimensional mechanics. Not reality weaver level, but close. And they're escalating, the intervals between incidents are decreasing. Can you track them? Stellan asked. Maybe. I'd need to visit one of the incident sites, examine the dimensional residue firsthand. Energy signatures fade quickly, but if we move fast, Strange checked the timestamps, the most recent incident was only 8 hours ago. The trail might still be fresh enough to follow. Stellan nodded decisively. Take a ship. Master Kriss will accompany you. Find who's behind this before more lives are lost. As they prepared to depart, Avar felt a familiar sensation, the force guiding her toward necessary action, warning of dangers ahead. 6 months ago, she would have sought council approval before every decision. Now, she trusted her partnership with Strange enough to act on instinct and justify later. They took a fast courier ship, arriving at the incident site within 3 hours. The debris field floated in the void, twisted metal, frozen atmosphere, the remnants of a cargo vessel that had carried 47 crew members. None survived. Strange extended his awareness, using techniques Avar had learned to recognize. His consciousness spread through local spacetime, perceiving dimensions of reality she couldn't access even through the Force. There, he said, pointing to apparently empty space. A dimensional fracture. Recent, within the past day. Someone opened a portal here, not to travel through, but to release raw dimensional energy. They used the hyperspace corridor as a focusing mechanism. His expression darkened. This was a test. They're refining the weapon. Can you trace where the portal originated? The energy signature is fading, but Strange's hands moved through increasingly complex patterns, golden light building as he channeled more power than Avar had seen him use since the Occlusion zone. I can follow it. But Avar, this is going to lead us somewhere dangerous. Whoever's developing dimensional weapons won't welcome investigators. Then we'll be careful. Avar moved to the helm, preparing the ship for immediate departure. Where are we going? Strange's magic locked onto the fading trail, creating a three-dimensional map of the path through hyperspace and normal space. The destination resolved, a remote system in the unknown regions, far from Republic patrols or Jedi protection. There, Strange said. That's where the attack originated. And I'm detecting multiple dimensional signatures, this isn't a lone experimenter. It's a facility. Possibly a research station. They jumped to hyperspace, following the trail. During the journey, Strange prepared for confrontation, reviewing the reality weaver techniques, practicing force-enhanced spells, ensuring his fusion of powers was combat-ready. Avar meditated, seeking guidance through the force. What she found was warning. Danger ahead, yes, but also opportunity. Whoever they were about to face represented a threat the galaxy needed to understand. And stopping them would prove beyond doubt that the partnership between Jedi and Force Sorcerer served a genuine purpose. They emerged in the target system. A station hung in orbit around a dead world, small, well-defended, radiating dimensional energy that made Strange's magic resonate sympathetically. That's no research station, Strange said grimly. That's a dimensional forge. They're manufacturing weapons using principles that should be theoretical. Someone gave them reality weaver knowledge, or discovered it independently. Approach or reconnaissance first? Avar asked. Before Strange could answer, the station's defense systems activated. Energy weapons, conventional and dimensional, locked onto their ship. I think they're making the choice for us, Strange said. The cloak billowed from his shoulders as he prepared for battle. Avar, remember what we learned in the Occlusion zone. Together we're stronger than the sum of our parts. Whatever's in that station, we face it as partners. Partners, Avar confirmed, her lightsaber ready. They descended toward the station, weapons fire surrounding them, uncertain what they would find but certain they would face it together. The Dimensional Forge represented a new threat, proof that the galaxy's dangers were evolving faster than the Jedi Order had anticipated. But the partnership between Avar Kriss and Dr. Stephen Strange was evolving too. 6 months of cooperation, training, and mutual growth had created something unprecedented in galactic history. Not just a Jedi and a sorcerer working together, but a genuine fusion of philosophies, a demonstration that cosmic power could bridge universes and traditions when wielded with wisdom and trust. The station's hangar bay doors opened, admitting them into whatever danger waited within. Avar felt the Force surge with anticipation, not fear, but readiness. This was what they'd been building toward. This was why Strange had been brought to their galaxy. They landed. Stepped into the unknown. Ready to face whatever threat had claimed 47 lives and promised to claim more. Together. Always together. And in the depths of the Dimensional Forge, something ancient and patient smiled. The Nameless might have been sealed away, but its influence had spread further than anyone realized. Seeds planted, experiments initiated, weapons forged from knowledge stolen from realities that should have remained separate. The war for dimensional stability had only just begun. But so had the legend of the first Force sorcerer and his Jedi partner, guardians who would stand against threats from beyond reality itself, proving that the greatest power came not from any single source, but from the courage to unite them. The partnership between Master Avar Kriss and Dr. Stephen Strange became legendary across the High Republic, a symbol of adaptation and evolution in the face of unprecedented threats. Their fusion of force and dimensional magic created a new discipline, eventually studied by select Jedi who showed both the aptitude and the wisdom to wield combined powers responsibly. Strange never found a way back to his own reality. The breach that brought him to the Star Wars galaxy remained permanently sealed, his connection to Earth severed beyond repair. But in time, he stopped viewing his presence as exile and began seeing it as destiny. He became the Sorcerer Supreme of a new reality, guardian against dimensional threats that the Jedi alone could not perceive or combat. The Dimensional Forge in the unknown regions proved to be only the beginning. Across the galaxy, individuals and organizations that had acquired fragments of reality weaver knowledge began emerging, each pursuing their own vision of how dimensional power should be used. Some sought protection. Others sought conquest. All required the careful attention of those who understood the dangers inherent in manipulating the barriers between realities. Master Kriss and Dr. Strange faced these threats together, their partnership evolving into something that transcended friendship or professional cooperation. They became proof that cosmic powers from different traditions could work in harmony, that the Force's wisdom and dimensional magic's versatility were complementary rather than contradictory. The Jedi Order changed slowly but inexorably. What began as grudging tolerance of Strange's presence became genuine integration of his teachings into advanced Jedi curriculum. The Archive's restricted section on dimensional mechanics gradually became accessible to properly trained masters. Young Padawans like Sila grew into Jedi Knights who commanded both force and magic, prepared for threats their predecessors never imagined. And somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, sealed behind barriers reinforced by the combined might of two cosmic powers, the Nameless remained imprisoned. Waiting. Patient. Knowing that eventually, inevitably, barriers weakened and seals failed. But when that day came, if it came, the galaxy would not face it unprepared. Because Dr. Stephen Strange had crashed through hyperspace into a reality not his own, and he had chosen to protect it with everything he had. The Force had guided him there. Magic had sustained him. And partnership had transformed him from an outsider into exactly what the High Republic needed, proof that the universe was larger, stranger, and more wondrous than anyone had dared to believe. May the Force be with you. More stories await.